Chapter 458. Ghostly was surprised, but from Pu-hong Master's words, he did not pursue the source of the information and had the intention to lend the treasure. Couldn't help but be overjoyed, prostrated on the ground. Even his voice trembled slightly, said, "Thank you, Master." Pu-hong Master went up to help him up, smiled, and said, "Patron, don't have to be so courteous. Let's go." Speaking, he waved his monk robe and walked out of the house. Ghostly and Fa followed behind him. Ghostly could not help but ask, "Master, who are we going to see?" Pu-hong Master indifferently said, "Patron should know that the common people often address my senior and junior brothers together, right?" Ghostly nodded, said, "Yes, Tian'in Temple, 4 great holy monks Hong, Da Ji Kong, the common people all revere them." When he said the word, a complicated expression flashed past his face. Even his voice also deepened. Pu-hong Master and Fa both felt this, besides sighing in their hearts. Naturally, they would not say much. Pu-hong Master put his palms together and said, "Not to mention old monk's 3rd junior brother Pu-ji, 4th junior brother Pu-kong, you have also met him that day. Now the one old monk is going to bring you to see is old monk's 2nd junior brother Pute." The 3 of them came down from little Tian'in Temple and again walked into the bustling Tian'in Temple. Along the way, the Tian'in Temple monks naturally, when they saw the abbot, all of them respectfully placed their palms together and paid their respects. Even the common people and believers were overjoyed, all prostrated. Some of the elderly even saw Pu-hong Master as a deity, knelt down and cowed out. Pu-hong Master was amiable, his face benevolent, walked all the way, bypassed the main hall, which had the most number of people, turned towards the more secluded northwest corner of Tian'in Temple. As the 3 of them walked, the believers' figures gradually disappeared behind them. The surroundings also gradually became deserted, until the end, when Pu-hong Master and the others stopped at a secluded courtyard entrance at the end of a small path. There was not a single figure around. Ghostly looked up, saw that this small courtyard was extremely simple and crude. The 1-person-high wall had long been mottled and peeling. The corners were covered with moss. The door of the small courtyard was half closed. Everyone could clearly see that in the middle of the courtyard, the ground was filled with dried leaves. From time to time, a breeze blew over. The leaves on the ground gently danced, adding a sense of desolation and ancientness to the atmosphere. Above the courtyard door hung a very dilapidated horizontal board. On it were 3 words, Jingxin Hall. Ghostly quietly stared at that board, seemed to be in a trance. Pu-hong Master walked into the courtyard. Fa followed behind him. After a few steps, he realized that Ghostly did not seem to be following. Felt surprised, turned back, and saw Ghostly was still looking at that board. Fa asked curiously, "Patron Zhang, what is it?" Ghostly's body moved, seemed to come back to his senses after a moment of silence, walked over, faintly said, "Nothing, just that the name on this board is similar to a place where I lived when I was young. I forgot myself for a moment," was rude. Fa glanced at him again, shook his head, and said, "Not at all. Patron, please come in." Ghostly nodded his head, walked deeper into the courtyard. Pu-hong Master had already stopped in front of a wooden house, turned back to look at the both of them. Ghostly walked up and quietly said, "Disciple has been lacking in manners." Pu-hong Master smiled and said, "No worries." After speaking, he turned around, gently stretched out his hand, and knocked 3 times on the wooden house door, said, "Amit Ba, Pu junior brother, today I have brought a patron to see you. I have disturbed junior brother's cultivation, my sin, my sin." Pu-hong Master smiled and walked in, Fa following behind him. Ghostly, for some reason, suddenly felt nervous, took a deep breath, and then stepped into the wooden house. Even though Ghostly already knew that Tian'in Temple monks were not people who cared about worldly luxuries, and the furnishings in Tian'in Temple were very simple, but after entering the wooden house, the shabbiness still shocked him. How was the furnishings simple? There was no furnishings at all. The floor was empty. Only one of the corners was covered with dry straw. A dark, skinny old monk sat cross-legged there, slowly lifting his eyes to look at them. Pu-hong Master walked up to that old monk. Ghostly quietly stood behind, looking from the side. That old monk's and Pu-hong Master's expressions were as different as heaven and earth. Pu-hong Master glowing with health and vigor. benevolent and benevolent, looked dignified and had his own bearing. No wonder the numerous devotees bowed down and worshipped him. And in comparison, that old monk sitting at the corner could really be described with the Buddhist common phrase, stinky skin bag. Puhong Master stood in front of that old monk and watched him for a long time, then slowly sighed, directly sat down on the dirty ground in front of that old monk, faintly said, "Junior brother, we haven't met for 10 years, right?" That old monk slowly put his palms together. His voice was still that hoarse, low and slow. Said, "Yes, senior, brother has always been." Well, Ghostly was shocked when he heard it. Both of them were in Tianyin Temple in this old monk's courtyard. Although it was remote, but along the way they did not see Tianyin Temple specially guarding it. Evidently he was not in seclusion. In the long 10 years, both of them had never met. It was really unimaginable. As if guessing what Ghostly was thinking, Puhong Master turned and smiled at Ghostly, said, "This is old monk's second junior brother Pewd." Although Ghostly still did not know why Puhong Master brought him to see this Pewd Master, but as one of the 4 great holy monks of Tianyin Temple. In addition, he had a favor to ask. He did not dare to slight him, quickly bowed and said, "Disciple Ghostly pays his respects to Pewd Master." Pewd Master slowly shifted his gaze over onto Ghostly's face. His movements were extremely stiff and slow, even making one feel that even moving his gaze was strenuous. Ghostly could not understand why one of the 4 great holy monks, whose name shook the world, would be like this, but on his face he did not dare to be disrespectful. Puhong Master faintly said, "Pewd Junior brother, what he is practicing is a branch of our Buddhism, called ascetic meditation. Only those with great wisdom and courage can cultivate. Don't look at his haggard appearance now, but in terms of cultivation skills, Pewd Junior brother has already far surpassed me." Pewd Master's haggard face, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, not sure if he was smiling. Anyway, from his appearance it was impossible to tell the change in his expression. Slowly said, "Senior brother, you must be joking." Puhong Master placed his palms together and softly chanted, "Amitabha Buddha," and then said, "Junior brother, today I came to disturb your cultivation. My sin is not small. I will first apologize, just that this matter is not like other things. Speaking until here." He glanced at Ghostly, said, "Junior brother, do you know who he is?" Pewd Master, ever since he looked at Ghostly, his eyes never left, just that his eyes seemed to always be like an ancient well without ripples. Nobody could tell what he was thinking. Right now, after listening to Puhong Master's words, Pewd Master unhurriedly said, "He is who?" Puhong Master sighed softly, said, "He is 10 years ago. The sin that Puji Junior brother planted, that grass temple village youngster Zhang Xiaofan at the foot of Qin Yun Hill." What? For the first time, Pewd Master's words did not pause. Even his expression also changed slightly. After a long time, his eyes were still staring deeply at Ghostly, said, "He is that child?" Not knowing if it was because he was speaking more and more, Pewd Master's pauses also gradually lessened, gradually became smoother. Chapter 459. Ghostly was speechless. The house was silent. After a moment, Puhong Master unhurriedly said, "Junior brother, you know the cause and effect of this matter. I don't have to say more. Today, this ghostly patron is to borrow a treasure from our Tianyin Temple to save someone." Pewd Master was still watching Ghostly. His gaze from the initial shock, astonishment, had already slowly turned gentle, obviously towards Ghostly. Pewd Master and Puhong Master and the rest had the same feeling. After hearing Puhong Master's words, Pewd Master's expression was indifferent, hoarsely said, "What treasure is it?" Speaking till now, Pewd Master's words although still paused, but it could already be roughly linked up. Puhong Master glanced at Ghostly, sighed, and said, "What he wants to borrow is Qian Kuan reincarnation plate." Pewd Master was stunned. His expressionless face slightly changed again. Obviously, he was also taken aback. Ghostly stepped forward, earnestly said, "Two masters, disciples, friend soul for the past 10 years has always been trapped in a strange object, no different from a living dead. Disciple's heart is like being cut by a knife every day. Although there is a 1 in a million hope, I dare not give up. I beseech both masters to be merciful if disciple's wish is fulfilled and disciple's friend is saved." Disciple is willing to be an ox or a horse to repay both masters' kindness. Puhong Master and Pewed Master both placed their palms together and chanted. Puhong Master said, "Patron, please don't be like this. Don't kill us." Just that after the initial shock, Pewed Master had already regained his composure. Frowning slightly, said, "May I ask, Patron, the news that Qian Kuan reincarnation plate is in our temple. Where did Patron hear it from?" Ghostly revealed a difficult expression, looked at Puhong Master. Puhong Master, with a bitter laugh, said, "Junior brother, I've already questioned Patron Ghostly about this matter, but according to Patron Ghostly, that senior master who told him this secret insisted on not letting him reveal his identity and background. As a senior brother, I can't make up my mind right now. Thinking about how you've been keeping the universe reincarnation plate, I came to disturb your cultivation. May I ask for your opinion?" Ghostly then understood why Puhong Master and Fa Xiang brought him to see this Pewed Master. Seemed like this mysterious treasure Qian Kuan reincarnation plate was really not a small matter. It actually required one of the 4 great holy monks Pewed Master to personally guard it for decades. Not sure if it really had miraculous effect. Could it save Bai Yao? Thinking of this, Ghostly could not help but feel his body heat up, his hands clenched into fists. The house was silent. Everyone looked at Pewed Master. Pewed Master's eyes were lowered, as if he was considering something. Looking at that expressionless face, Ghostly's palms started to sweat. Not knowing how much time had passed, Pewed Master slowly raised his eyes, looked at Ghostly, gently placed his palms together, and said, "Patron." Ghostly quickly returned the greeting, said, "Begging Master to be merciful." Pewed Master's voice was still hoarse, his tone slow, said, "Decades ago, 3rd Junior Brother Puji made a grave mistake to you. Our Tianyin temple has really lost a lot of money to you." Puhong Master and Fa Xiang heard him. Both placed their palms together, softly chanted Amit Ba. Pewed Master continued, "And this universe reincarnation plate was brought back to our temple by Puji Junior Brother himself from his journey in the Northwest Wilderness. Speaking of which, you're also considered as his disciple. It is only right to hand it over to you." Just that. Ghostly was rejoicing over Pewed Master's words. Unexpectedly, Pewed Master's face suddenly revealed a difficult expression. Seemed to be hesitating. Suddenly the image of Bai Yao lying quietly in the cold stone chamber flashed past his mind. His body trembled slightly. Hot blood surged. Clenched his teeth and strode 2 steps forward. Came before Pewed Master. Puhong Master and Fa Xiang were shocked. Pewed Master was also surprised, looked up at Ghostly. Instead, Ghostly did not have any disrespectful intention. Instead, his knees softened, knelt down in front of Pewed Master. Pewdong! A deep muffled sound reverberated from the ground. Ghostly's forehead kowtowed in front of Pewed Master. Looking from the side, his hands were tightly clenched into fists. His knuckles were faintly white. His body was also trembling slightly. His voice was choked with sobs. In a low voice incessantly said, "Master, my sins are heavy. I have let down many people. If I cannot save her, I beg Master to be merciful. Beg Master to be merciful." Towards the end, he seemed to be unable to control himself. Only repeated pleading. Fa Xiang, who was standing beside, could not help but be moved. A pained expression flashed past his face. Pewed Master was also stunned. After a moment of silence, turned and looked at Puhong Master. Puhong Master's palms were placed together, did not say anything. After a long time, gently nodded his head. Pewed Master slowly turned his head, looked at that young man who was still prostrating before him. After a long time, softly said, "You can get up." Ghostly was still kneeling on the ground, not moving. The corner of Pewed Master's mouth twitched. It seemed to be a faint smile. Not knowing what he thought of, his deep voice slowly said, "Your temperament is completely different from Puji Junior Brother back then." The expression on his face for a moment seemed to flash a faint sadness. Then he said in a low voice, "Get up, I promise you." Ghostly's body trembled, unable to suppress the ecstasy in his heart. Abruptly raised his head. Pewed Master slowly took out an object from his bosom. His movements were very slow, with a feeling of pausing at times. Ghostly looked over. Pewed Master took out a round object, wrapped in black cloth, about half a cheese square, but what was inside was not clear. Seemed like this treasure was actually Pewd Master's personal collection. It really could not be underestimated. The black cloth was not tied with a dead knot. Pewd Master placed it on the ground. His hand gently untied the knot, but when he was about to lift the black cloth, he seemed to hesitate for a moment and then sighed, shook his head, lifted the black cloth. A gentle white light, slowly emitted from the black cloth, became brighter and brighter, but did not give you any dazzling feeling. In the gentle light, a faint dust gently fluttered. In this secluded and quiet little house, a melodious, deep, melodious song seemed to be heard from somewhere, indistinctly reverberating in the invisible space. The black cloth was completely lifted. Ghostly finally saw clearly what was in front of him. This was the treasure that he had pinned his hopes on to save by Yao. Just at the next moment, his face suddenly revealed a shocked expression. As if in disbelief, looked up in shock at Pewd Master. Pewd Master was expressionless. The next moment, Ghostly subconsciously looked at Puhong Master. Puhong Master only sighed softly, put his palms together, and softly said, Amitabha Buddha. Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King's sect headquarters. Not knowing when it started, many of the Ghost King sect disciples started to feel that something was not right with their surroundings. Inexplicable, strange things, some things that would never happen before and never happened before, actually in these few days, again and again. For example, this cave, which had been exceptionally sturdy for the past few hundred years, the stone rooms where the Ghost King sect disciples resided in, were surrounded by extremely hard rock walls, not to mention cracking. Even if they wanted to use a knife to poke a small hole in the wall, they would be exhausted and might not even succeed. But these few days, many of the walls in the Ghost King sect headquarters had started to have strange cracks, and these cracks were still expanding. Another example, the Ghost King sect disciples who were living in the cave had long been used to the quiet life. However, whenever they returned to their rooms and were about to fall asleep, many of them would hear an indistinct, terrifying, strange sound coming from deep below their own stone rooms. That strange sound was like a huge beast's roar, also like the legendary evil demon's roar. And even more, some of them even felt that it was like an enormous lava torrent was rumbling and flowing below them. Any time it would erupt and drown them. That strange sound, like sharp needles piercing into their ears, startled them awake, but after waking up they could not hear anything. These strange things had never happened before, but what terrified the Ghost King sect disciples the most were the strange things that happened in the crowd. There was a small number of Ghost King sect disciples who looked no different from usual, but would suddenly go berserk, completely lose their rationality, like the most frenzied beasts attacking anyone around them. Even if it was their own relatives or best friends, these frenzied Ghost King sect disciples would still use the most cruel methods to kill anyone they saw, until they were killed by the combined forces of the others who rushed over. In a short period of time, such horrible things had happened many times in succession in the Ghost King sect. For a moment, everyone was in danger. Even their relatives and friends did not dare to trust each other. Nobody knew what was happening. Everyone was panicking. The entire majestic Fox Mountain seemed to have fallen into a dangerous and strange atmosphere. The setting sun was like blood. At dusk, a few disciples standing at the entrance of Ghost King sect stood restlessly. Some quietly gazed at the sun which was about to set. Some in a daze. Not knowing what they were thinking, suddenly, someone exclaimed, said, "Someone is here." Everyone was surprised, looked up, and saw below majestic Fox Mountain, in the afterglow of the setting sun, a white figure drifted over. The direction was towards the Ghost King sect. They did not know if it was friend or foe. For a moment couldn't help but felt nervous. That white figure's speed was rather fast. In a blink it was already halfway up the mountain. Near the entrance of Ghost King sect headquarters, the disciples went up to welcome it, saw it clearly. With a sound, they all sighed lightly, heaved a sigh of relief. The person was actually Ghost King sect head Ghost King and vice head Ghost Li's distinguished guest Xiaobai. Chapter 460. Xiaobai stopped, felt something strange. The disciples' expressions of relief were different from the past. Maybe they themselves did not feel it, but Xiaobai was a nine-tailed celestial fox who had trained for 1,000 years. What had she not seen before? It was almost an instinctive reaction. She felt that these disciples seemed to have a huge rock pressing down on their backs, like a taut bowstring, unable to control themselves. But right now to ask her to say anything, it was naturally impossible. Moreover, the disciples all made way. Smiling apologetically, Xiaobai nodded slightly to them, thinking maybe that Ghost King sect head was too strict. Xiaobai walked 2 steps into the mountain, suddenly stopped, turned back, and called out to one of the disciples, "Hey." It would have been better if she did not call out. She just suddenly called out from behind them. Almost at the same time, all of the disciples seemed to be electrocuted. Their bodies quivered, jumped aside at the same time. Some even pulled out their weapons. All looked like they were facing a formidable enemy, prepared for a life and death battle. Xiaobai was stunned, cried out, "What happened to you all?" The few Ghost King sect disciples looked at each other. After a while, they slowly put down their weapons, relaxed. One of them, who was called by Xiaobai, gave a bitter laugh, said, "What is it?" Xiaobai assessed them carefully. These disciples all had dark circles under their eyes, brows tightly frowned. Their faces looked tired, as if they had not had a good rest for a long time. Her suspicions deepened, asked, "What exactly happened to you all? Why are you all so nervous when I called out casually?" That disciple again gave a bitter laugh, shook his head, and said, "Miss, don't ask. What did you call me for?" Xiaobai hesitated for a moment, said, "Is your vice sect head ghostly in the mountain?" That disciple shook his head and said, "Vice sect head has gone out for many days. He is not in the mountain." Xiaobai frowned, said, "Where did he go? Did he say when we'll be back?" That Ghost King sect disciple said, "Deputy head's whereabouts must be mysterious. How would we know his whereabouts? As for when he will return, naturally we also do not know." Xiaobai stood silently for a moment, nodded her head, thought that it was indeed so. Where Ghostly wanted to go, these ordinary Ghost King sect disciples would not know. She turned and walked towards the mountain. Just that when she moved, her body gradually disappeared into the shadows. With her extraordinary hearing ability, she could hear the Ghost King sect disciples talking softly at the cave entrance. "Oldly, what happened to you just now? You even pulled out your saber?" "Luckily, Miss Xiaobai doesn't mind. Otherwise, let's see how you're going to clean up this mess." Another person beside laughed bitterly. Seemed like it was that person called Oldly he was heard saying, "You say, why am I so nervous? If you have nothing to do, then why are you jumping so high like a rabbit? These few days are really King inhumane. A slight breeze and the grass will fly, and I will be scared out of my wits." The rest of them all sighed. No one refuted Old Lee's words, as if they all agreed with him, following which everyone seemed to be preoccupied and did not want to speak anymore. Xiaobai hid in the shadows of the mountain path. The puzzlement on her face grew heavier, but after thinking for a while, she still could not think of anything wrong and could only walk forward first. This time she returned to majestic Fox Mountain. Naturally, the main reason was to find Ghostly. Some time ago, she once again entered the southern border Miao tribe holy altar. According to the evil shaman's hint, she finally discovered the ancient shaman tribe's secret engraved behind the Miao tribe dog deity statue. Among it was what she had been searching for Ghostly, but at the same time, she also discovered some other strange things. Until now, she still had not made up her mind to tell Ghostly everything. But right now, Ghostly was not in majestic Fox Mountain. She naturally had no way to tell him. Speaking of which, not long ago, she and Ghostly had brushed past each other in the abandoned morgue outside Yang City. If Xiaobai was here, with 1,000 years of cultivation, Ghostly's situation might have turned for the better. Just that in the unseen world, it was predestined. Nobody could say for sure. Xiaobai calculated in her heart. The world was vast and boundless. To find Ghostly alone was like finding a needle in a haystack, but Bai Yao was here in majestic Fox Mountain. Ghostly would sooner or later return here. Anyway, she had been hesitating on what to say to Ghostly. Might as well think about it while waiting for Ghostly. Once she thought about it, Xiaobai made up her mind, subconsciously turned and walked towards Ghostly's residence. Her footsteps reverberated in the tunnel. After walking for a while, Xiaobai suddenly frowned and stopped. In the long tunnel, the place where Ghost King sect disciples would often walk around chatting and laughing, right now, it was empty. Only her alone figure, standing in the tunnel. For some unknown reason, everyone had hidden themselves and disappeared without a trace. Xiaobai turned back to look. The end of the tunnel seemed to be shrouded in deep darkness, so thick that it could not be dispersed anymore. She quietly watched for a moment, turned, and continued to walk. Light footsteps reverberated in the empty tunnel, seemed to be several times louder than usual. In this strange silence, Xiaobai slowly walked to Ghost Li's residence. For some reason, although Ghost Li was not there, she still subconsciously walked there. Just when she was about to push open Ghost Li's door, her body suddenly froze, as if she had discovered something. She slowly raised her head and looked up. On the outer wall of the stone room, there were 7, 8 deep cracks. The exposed rocks were rough and uneven, as if it was forcefully torn apart by some great force, twisting in pain, like a huge wound carved on the stone wall, not knowing if blood would flow out from the cracks. Xiaobai's body suddenly trembled, her eyes staring at the cracks, pupils contracted slightly. With her 1,000 years of cultivation, she could even acutely sense, beside her, in those glaring cracks, indistinctly a strange aura floated. That aura made her subconsciously disgusted. But before she could think clearly about these things, there was a sudden change. From the far end of the tunnel behind her, there was a sudden heart-wrenching roar, followed by sharp screams everywhere. Some were furious, some were terrified, and the sound of angry cursing and crying blew over like the wind. Xiaobai's figure flashed, swept toward the place where the cries came from. Until now, she was really sure something she did not know had happened in majestic Fox Mountain, and most likely it was a terrible change. Her white figure flew forward quickly in the tunnel. Suddenly, many people ran out from somewhere in the previously empty tunnel. Some of them ran into the distance, but most of them held their blades and rushed toward a certain direction with murderous intent. In the distance, someone cried out, "They're here again, they're here again." This time, Old Li has gone crazy. Xiaobai's heart thumped. For some reason, her heart suddenly sank. Then, her figure had already neared, stopped beside an empty space surrounded by many people. Everyone's faces were filled with murderous intent, but Xiaobai could clearly see that behind their murderous intent, there was more fear. Among the crowd, a man covered in blood was holding a sharp blade. He was like a trapped beast, roaring fiercely. From time to time, he would brandish his blade. At his feet, there were a few people lying on the ground. Each of them had several deep wounds. It seemed that it would be difficult to treat them. Xiaobai stared blankly at the murderer who seemed to have completely gone mad. Just a moment ago, at the entrance of the cave, she could still hear him talking like a normal person, also heard his deep worry, but in a blink his companions were already lying at his feet, killed by him, and he himself, like a deranged beast, roared incessantly. The surrounding people roared. The next moment, the crowd surged forward. Old Li waved the sharp blade in his hand, wanting to kill, but in an instant even more sharp blades had already hacked him to the ground. After a while, the crowd slowly dispersed. Xiaobai silently looked over, only to see his body trembling slightly on the ground. His head covered in wounds slowly turned over. In that instant, Xiaobai's eyes met with his. Rumble, like an invisible clap of thunder in her mind. Xiaobai could not help but take half a step back. The blood drained from her face. The man's eyes had completely turned blood red. Other than killing intent, there was not a trace of humanity, that cruel despair. Even with her 1,000 years of cultivation, she could not breathe. What kind of madness was this? The crowd whispered, slowly dispersed in fear. Xiaobai slowly stepped forward, unhurriedly approached the body that had lost its life. Dark red blood silently flowed, slowly seeping into the soil and rocks on the ground. That crazy blood-red eyes, probably because of the loss of life, had already dimmed and turned pale red. Xiaobai stared intently. Suddenly, she abruptly turned, her face as cold as ice, looked at the tunnel which had once again become empty. In the darkness ahead, an extremely dense bloody aura was continuously being emitted. It was like a greedy, bloodthirsty beast that was staring fiercely at everything outside, thirsting for an endless amount of blood. A figure quietly stood in the darkness, indistinctly discernible. Chapter 461. Mount Meru, Tianyin Temple. In the remote wooden house, it was silent. Puhong Master and Pewed Master both kept quiet. Xiang stood beside. His face also revealed a stunned expression, but also maintained his silence. Ghostly instead stared fixedly at the open treasure in front of him. In the gentle white light, his face alternated between bright and dark. Wrapped in a black cloth was a jade disc-shaped, magical treasure. The material appeared to be extremely warm and moist in greenish-white color. Not far from the edge, there were a few indented zigzag folds. Every fold would have a thin groove, drawing towards the center of the jade plate from deep to shallow. The white light in the center of the jade plate was the softest and brightest, almost like water gently flowing in the void. Below the light, numerous extremely small jade cubes could be seen, densely packed but clearly orderly arranged in the center of the jade plate. And with Ghost Lee's current cultivation, he could see that every side of the jade cubes was engraved with an ancient character, and he could not understand the meaning of these characters. At the edge of the jade plate, north, south, east, west, the four directions were engraved with mysterious ancient pictures, some like the stars in the sky, some like a deep-sea island, and some pictures so strange that he could not understand what it meant. But right now, Ghostly was not too concerned about the meaning of these small characters and pictures. What he was surprised was that these innumerable small jade cubes were actually flowing nonstop. Not a single jade cubes was still, all were moving. They were like flowing water, flowing slowly, but not only towards one direction. All directions were their directions, but under such dazzling movements. There seemed to be an indistinct truth contained within. All the jade cubes did not show any signs of collision. Hey! Suddenly, a shout like thunder sounded beside his ears. Ghost Lee's body swayed, as if he was startled awake from a dream, his head drenched in sweat, as if he had just gone through a great battle. He was extremely exhausted, gasping for breath. Puhong Master, who had awakened Ghost Lee with the lion's roar, his eyes revealed compassion, gently placed his palms together and said, "Patron, your life has been rough. There are too many worldly ties and even more innumerable sad past events. Your heart devil is extremely heavy. This Qian Kuan reincarnation plate is the one and only thing in the world. It has the ability to pull and seize souls, can determine life and death, calculate reincarnation, determine fate. It has the power to reverse the universe, and can also cause one to lose one's will, heart devil devouring one's body. Please be careful." Ghostly panted heavily. After a long while, he slowly calmed down. That Qian Kuan reincarnation jade plate was still emitting a gentle white light, silently flowing in front of everyone. Although he was shocked by this unheard of treasure, but thinking that if this treasure was really that miraculous, then wouldn't the hope of saving Bai Yao be higher? Thinking of this, Ghostly was not alarmed, but instead delighted. Immediately kowtowed to Puhong Master and Pewed Master, said, "Disciple pleads both masters to be compassionate. Build a 7-story pagoda. Help Disciple. Lend this treasure to Disciple temporarily to save someone. After the matter is over, Disciple will definitely return to the mountain personally. In the future, I will worship it day and night. Pray for both masters to achieve enlightenment." After speaking, he kowtowed heavily. Pewed Master slightly raised his hand, although his speech was becoming more fluent, but his body movements were still very numb. His arm only moved a little and then stopped. But luckily Puhong Master had already walked over, helped Ghostly up, gently said, "Patron, don't have to be like this. Stand up and speak." Xiang also walked over. Ghostly then slowly stood up. Puhong Master smiled and said, "Since Pew Jr. Brother has already taken out this treasure, it means he agreed to lend it to you. Don't worry." Ghostly was overjoyed, was about to bow and thank them when Pewed Master's voice was heard. "Patron, old monk has a few words to say to you." Ghostly quickly solemnly said, "Master, please speak. Disciple is all ears." Pewed Master unhurriedly said, "This treasure is both good and evil, most able to confuse one's will, a person's heart like a clear mirror. Walk with dignity. It will be of great help. On the contrary, like just now, it will incite the heart devil, devouring one's body. I do not know Patron well, but I can see patron skills are extremely profound and knowledgeable, proficient in all kinds of skills. Your future cultivation potential is not to be underestimated. Your achievements will far surpass us. Just that patron is strong on the outside but weak on the inside, vigorous but lacking in emotions. The heart devil has already become a great calamity, like a sharp sword hanging over your head. Patron, do you know? Ghostly was silent for a long time, said, "To be honest, disciple does not care about attaining good fortune, cultivating to attain immortality. As for life and death, after so many unforeseen events, disciple has a feeling that there is nothing left to live for. The secular world, to me, is like an illusion. Why should disciple care about a mere heart devil? Disciple is still running about in the world today, just that the ones in my heart, there are still a few that I cannot abandon, just a few people, I cannot abandon them. Naturally, I will live on to repay my bosom friends." He slowly raised his head, smiled faintly, and said, "As for the rest, Master don't have to worry about me." Pewed Master looked at Ghostly for a long time, sighed, closed his eyes, and did not speak anymore. Ghostly bowed to Pewed Master, walked forward, and carefully wrapped the Qian Kun reincarnation plate again, carefully placed it in his bosom. Puhong Master placed his palms together, said, "Patron, please be careful." Ghostly nodded, suddenly frowned, patted his forehead, laughed, and said, "Look at my memory. I am too happy and forgot everything. How to use this treasure? I have not asked for guidance." Pewed Master slowly opened his eyes, exchanged a glance with Puhong Master, who was looking over. Puhong Master had a questioning look in his eyes. Pewed Master instead sighed softly, slowly shook his head. Puhong Master frowned slightly, did not speak. Pewed Master hesitated for a moment, looked at Ghostly. Ghostly bowed deeply, said, "Master, please guide. Disciple will be eternally grateful." Pewed Master silently shook his head. Ghostly was stunned for a moment, did not understand. After a moment, Pewed Master's hoarse and deep voice was heard saying, "I have kept this treasure with me for several years, day and night studying it. Until now, I can only see that it can understand the profound transformation, fix the soul, and reincarnate, but I am still unable to understand how to use this treasure." Ghostly, as if a pail of cold water was poured on his head, chilled from head to toe, looked at Pewed Master in disbelief, and then slowly at Puhong Master. Puhong Master sighed, said, "Patron, this is the reason why me and Pewed Junior Brother have been hesitating. Qian Kun reincarnation plate indeed has the ability to reverse Qian Kun, reverse karma, but most probably because this power is too heaven-defying, ordinary people are unable to decipher the mystery within." Ghostly was stunned, speechless, his heart in a mess. Thousands and thousands of words gushed up in his mind, but in the end there was only a bitter taste of speechlessness. After a long time, he suddenly laughed bitterly, shook his head, and said, "No matter what, will both masters please lend this treasure to disciple? No matter what, there is still hope." Puhong Master and Pewed Master said at the same time, "Amit Ba." Xiang beside could not bear it, stepped forward and quietly said, "Patron Zhang, I am really sorry." Ghostly silently shook his head, suddenly smiled at Xiang. Just that in Xiang's eyes, that smile was extremely bitter. He was heard unhurriedly saying, "Xiang's senior brother, you don't have to comfort me. Actually, this kind of thing, it is not the first time for me, not so long ago. There was also a great hope right in front of my eyes, but unfortunately, it was all for naught." His voice suddenly turned deep. A look of extreme pain flashed past his face. Without further words, he cupped his hands together towards the two masters, thanked them deeply, and then abruptly turned around. Without turning back, strode out. Looking at Ghostly's back figure, Puhong Master's expression was complicated. He placed his palms together and softly chanted, "Amit Ba, Buddha is merciful. He is entangled with negative karma. His life is really bitter." Pewed Master was silent for a moment, also softly chanted, "Amit Ba." Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King's sect headquarters. Xiao Bai had already returned to Majestic Fox Mountain for 3 days. In these 3 days, her brows did not seem to relax. Within these 3 days, tragedies had happened more than once in front of her. watching those Ghost King sect disciples who died crazily and the surrounding people who were immersed in fear day by day. Watching even if she did not go crazy, there were many others who were driven crazy by the atmosphere. Xiaobai was completely sure, in this majestic Fox Mountain, something strange and terrible definitely happened. Chapter 462. However, what made her most puzzled and angry was that under such circumstances she actually could not see Ghost King sect head Ghost King. From those Ghost King sect disciples, Ghost King suddenly gave the order to go into seclusion and would not meet any guests. Even the ordinary Ghost King sect disciple were not able to meet him. Xiaobai sent the disciples several times to inform, but the news was always the same. Either the disciples who went to inform said they could not meet Ghost King sect head, or Ghost King sent a message to Miss Xiaobai to wait for a few more days, and he would be out of seclusion immediately. In short, he would not come out to meet her. Although Xiaobai's skills were high, but being in such a strange atmosphere in Ghost King sect, her mood would not be good no matter what, and every day she saw people dying of madness beside her. The horror of this crazy place could not be described with words. In fact, with Xiaobai's 1,000 years of skills, she could already vaguely feel that behind this vast and magnificent cave, there was a strange bloodthirsty power, constantly expanding, especially every time she saw someone going crazy and dying. That special bloody stench would become thicker and thicker. 3 days ago, she had just arrived at majestic Fox Mountain and met the first Ghost King sect disciple, Lao Li, going crazy and dying. She accidentally discovered a mysterious figure hiding in a corner. The bloody stench was the strongest, but when she followed, that mysterious figure had already disappeared and had not appeared since that day. At this moment, Xiaobai felt that his patience was about to run out. In the stone room, Xiaobai sat alone. The surrounding thick stone walls, although also filled with cracks that were not there before, but it could still block out most of the noises, surrounded this stone room with a kind of precious tranquility. However, Xiaobai's expression did not show any signs of calmness at all. On the contrary, the anger on her face became more and more intense. Everything that had happened in the past few days had completely destroyed her previous impression of the Ghost King. Her disciples had fallen into a deep terror, and the sect master had completely disappeared without a trace. He did not even come out to say a word to appease the people, not to mention taking any measures to resolve the situation. This was simply unheard of. Xiaobai even suspected that something big had happened in this Ghost King sect when she was not around. Some powerful figure had secretly killed Ghost King, and that was why there was such chaos. If not with Ghost King's great talent and bold vision, how would such a scene happen? Just that no matter how Xiaobai thought about it, she still felt that Ghost King was such a powerful figure. There was no reason for his subordinates to rebel. And Xiaobai was still mindful of her sister Xiaoqi and Ghost King being husband and wife. She did not want to make things too stiff and could only wait patiently, who knew that this wait lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Xiaobai's face was as gloomy as water, slapped the bed beside her, then stood up and walked straight to the door of the stone room. It had been 3 days. She finally could not hold it in any longer, decided to go see Ghost King, and ask clearly, if not, she might as well leave this place, this kind of strange place. She really did not want to stay another day. Just as she was about to approach the stone door, Xiaobai suddenly frowned, as if she sensed something, and stopped in her tracks. Sure enough, a moment later, there was a commotion outside the stone door, followed by a respectful voice. "Is Miss Xiaobai here?" Xiaobai walked up and opened the door, saw a Ghost King sect disciple standing outside, about 20 years old, looked very young, but there were some dark circles under his eyes and an unconcealable tiredness. One could imagine that this person was also troubled by the strange things around him. Seeing Xiaobai standing there, this Ghost King sect disciple's expression became even more respectful. Xiaobai and Ghost King sect head Ghost King and vice sect head Ghost Li had an extraordinary relationship. Everyone in Ghost King's sect knew about it. Naturally, they were respectful to her. Xiaobai glanced at him, said, "What is it?" The disciple was heard saying, "Disciple is under sect head's orders to invite Miss Xiaobai to meet him." Xiaobai was surprised and then sneered, said, "He finally has the time. Finally willing to meet me?" Her tone was filled with disrespect and anger towards Ghost King. The disciple heard it. A trace of fear flashed past his face. His head lowered even more. Xiaobai snorted, but did not want to make things difficult for him, indifferently said, "Just nice. I am also going to meet him. Since it is so, you lead the way." The disciple seemed relieved, nodded and said, "Yes, miss, please follow me." After speaking, he did not dare to take another look at Xiaobai, turned and walked deeper into the tunnel. Xiaobai followed behind the disciple. The direction they were heading towards was Ghost King's residence. Seemed like Ghost King had really come out from his so-called seclusion and returned to his own house. Xiaobai's lips twitched. A cold smile flashed past her face. The two of them walked along. When they were about 10 zhongs away from Ghost King's stone chamber, the disciple stopped, quietly said, "Miss Xiaobai, sect head has instructed to meet you alone. I will not go in." Xiaobai frowned, even though Ghost King had instructed, but to stop and leave when they were still 10 zhongs away, no matter what, it was an extremely rude action. But when she turned to look at that disciple, she was stunned. That disciple's expression was stiff. His hands at his side seemed to be involuntarily rubbing his clothes. His palms seemed to be sweating profusely, extremely nervous and fearful. Xiaobai was silent for a moment. Her expression softened, sighed softly, and said, "All right, you can go." That young disciple raised his head to look at Xiaobai and then immediately lowered his head. But it was obvious that his entire body relaxed, as if 1,000 catty boulder had been lifted off his back. The corners of his mouth also revealed a trace of smile. He was heard quietly saying, "Many thanks, Mississippi," speaking. He turned and quickly walked away. Xiaobai's eyes turned over, looked at Ghost King's stone chamber. After a moment, composed herself, took a step forward. Suddenly, at this moment, a heart-wrenching howl was heard from afar behind her. That sound was sharp like a sharp blade. In that instant pierced the fragile peace in this cave. It was not the first time Xiaobai heard such a sound, but her chest still sank abruptly. She turned around with a sound, but the tunnel was still empty. Only a figure like a stiff rock stood there. Far away, the howl and the clamor of the people who had rushed over after hearing the sound gradually mixed together, followed by chaotic shouting and fighting sounds. A faint smell of blood, like invisible flowing water, again flowed around Xiaobai's body. Just that right now, Xiaobai temporarily did not care about these. Her brows tightly frowned, stared at that Ghost King's sect disciple. Ghost King's residence was naturally located in a quieter corner. This passageway was rather long. Right now, other than Xiaobai and that young man, there was no one else. The terrifying cries that made one's heart numb continued to be heard, not knowing which pitiful person had gone crazy again. Suddenly, that young disciple's frozen body started to tremble. The trembling became more and more violent, following which he made an almost despairing howl. "Ah, I can't take it anymore." He pulled out the saber that was protecting his body, as if the void around him was full of evil ghosts. He waved the saber in a frenzy, and the sharp saber made a sharp whistling sound in the air. From time to time, it would hit the hard stone wall, leaving faint marks. The cries gradually died down, but the crowd seemed to have heard something and started to move over. Xiaobai coldly snorted. Suddenly a white figure flashed. She had already reached that young disciple. That young disciple also seemed to have lost his senses. The next strike was toward Xiaobai. Xiaobai's left hand grabbed the air, quick like lightning had already grabbed that young disciple's wrist, exerted a little strength. Immediately a crisp sound was heard. The sharp blade in that disciple's hand fell, landed on the ground, and he too leaned weakly against the stone wall. Xiaobai looked straight into that person's eyes. He was panting heavily, his eyes scattered and somewhat crazy, but other than a few red veins in his eyes, there was no bloodthirsty red color. Xiaobai let out a sigh of relief, but she heard the noise from the distance approaching. After pondering for a moment, she waved her right hand over the young disciple's head. With a flash of her white sleeve, the young disciple's body shook, his eyes slowly closed, and he powerlessly fell to the ground. Xiaobai's face tensed, abruptly turned, drifted towards Ghost King's stone chamber, and behind her, many figures indistinctly appeared, running over. Chapter 463. Boom! The heavy stone door closed behind Xiao Bai with a deep sound. At the same time, the noise in the distance was cut off. Xiao Bai's bright eyes swept across the room and then landed on the man sitting behind the desk in front of her. That man was tall, his face stern, his bearing imposing. It was Ghost King. Right now, Ghost King also looked up at Xiao Bai, but did not speak. Before Xiao Bai came here, she had accumulated a lot of grievances, but right now she actually did not know where to start. Snorted, her eyes unexpectedly looked at the stone room again, and then frowned slightly. A strange feeling surfaced in her heart, as if something was wrong with this room, but the surrounding furnishings were exactly the same as when she came here before. Not the slightest change. Even Xiao Bai herself could not tell what was wrong. At this moment, Ghost King slowly stood up, said, "Why did you suddenly come back again?" His voice seemed very deep, different from his usual tone, but Xiao Bai right now had many things on her mind and did not pay much attention. While Ghost King asked this, she sneered and said, "So you still know that I'm back? Anyway, I'm not back to look for you." Ghost King indifferently said, "Oh, then what is it for?" Xiao Bai impatiently said, "I am back to look for Ghostly, but now I have no time to talk about this. I have a lot of questions to ask you. Wait." Ghost King's calm face suddenly changed, interrupted Xiao Bai, and said, "You were saying that you were looking for Ghostly?" Xiao Bai glanced at him. Her lips moved slightly, said, "So what if I am?" Ghost King's face darkened. A strange glint flashed in his eyes. He stared at Xiao Bai for a moment. An inexplicable chill seemed to emanate from his eyes, but Xiao Bai seemed to not feel anything. Her expression did not change. Instead, she looked straight into Ghost King's eyes, indistinctly provocative. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Ghost King suddenly sighed, was the first to look away, said, "Nothing." Xiao Bai coldly snorted, said, "Let me ask you, this period of time Majestic Fox Mountain is in a mess. Every day, someone inexplicably went crazy and hurt people. Every day, someone died tragically. Everyone in Ghost King's sect is in a state of panic. Everyone is in danger. Do you know or not?" Ghost King clasped his hands behind his back. After hearing this shocking news, his expression was as stiff as a rock and did not change. After a moment, he indifferently said, "Oh, there is such a thing?" Xiao Bai's anger was not small. She stepped forward, angrily said, "You, as Ghost King's sect head, how can you be so indifferent to this matter? What exactly are you thinking?" Ghost King turned around, his eyes turned colder, glanced at Xiao Bai. His tone turned cold and said, "You also know that I am the Ghost King sect leader, but I don't know what Miss Xiao Bai you are in Ghost King sect. What right do you have to interfere in my Ghost King sect's affairs?" Not knowing how much time had passed, Xiao Bai was heard speaking word by word. "This foundation has my sister Xiao Qi's blood and sweat in it. I don't care what kind of madness you are in Ghost King's sect. What right do you have to meddle in our sect's affairs?" After an unknown period of time, Xiao Bai said word by word, "This foundation has my sister Xiao Qi's blood, sweat, and tears in it. I don't care what kind of crazy you are, but I can't watch you destroy it." "Destroy it?" "Ha ha!" Ghost King seemed to have heard the funniest words, laughed out loud. His expression even changed from gloomy to arrogant, gave a long howl to the sky, said, "What do you know? It is because this foundation has Xiao Qi's blood and sweat in it. That's why I am managing it with all my heart. In the future, when you see me unify the universe, dominate the world, you will know my methods, ha ha ha." His laughter was savage, his expression spirited, totally different from the past, totally not his usual steady demeanor. Xiao Bai could not help but be taken aback. Xiao Bai is a nine-tailed celestial fox. Although she usually treated people kindly, but she did not necessarily value human lives that much. Just that right now, looking at Ghost King's expression, he actually completely disregarded the lives of the numerous Ghost King sect disciples. Even to her, as a demon in the eyes of the human race, she also felt that it was too much. Xiao Bai felt that her coming back this time was really a mistake. Everyone around her looked like they were going to turn into lunatics. Those who were not crazy were almost crazy, and this Ghost King in front of her was also abnormal, really infuriating and puzzling. In her anger, Xiao Bai angrily shouted, "Are you crazy? Those people are your sect disciples. How can you disregard their lives?" Ghost King was still laughing maniacally, but when he heard Xiao Bai's crazy, his expression immediately changed. The muscles on his face twisted, his laughter stopped, his eyes, instantly as sharp as knives, looked straight at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai saw Ghost King's sudden change, indistinctly revealed some murderous intent. Her heart was slightly shaken, and almost at the same time, with her 1,000 years of fox cultivation and sharpness, she discovered another thing, made her body tremble slightly, looked up in shock at Ghost King. In the stone room, in the silence, there was a faint and strange smell of blood. And this strange power, even though Xiao Bai did not want to believe it, it was clearly emitted from the Ghost King's body. "What did you say?" Ghost King stood there, stared at Xiao Bai. His voice again turned deep, slowly spitting out this question from between his teeth. Xiao Bai did not answer. She only looked at Ghost King, and then her expression from the initial shock slowly calmed down, turned expressionless, and in the end her eyes even indistinctly carried some strange mockery. She was silent for a long time, looked up and faintly said, "I was impatient just now. My words were not right. Please don't mind." These words were clearly out of Ghost King's expectation. Even with his composure, he could not help but look surprised, but regardless, Xiao Bai's words, the tense atmosphere in the stone room, immediately relaxed. That strange smell of blood also seemed to slowly fade. Xiao Bai looked deeply at Ghost King, said, "I said just now I'm here to look for Ghostly. Since he's not here, I also can't be bothered to wait here. I will leave now." Ghost King hesitated for a moment, frowned slightly, seemed to still not understand the reason for Xiao Bai's sudden change in attitude, even hesitated to speak, but Xiao Bai did not give Ghost King more time to consider, directly said, "If you have nothing else, I will take my leave now." After speaking, she turned and walked towards the stone door. Ghost King's stone room was naturally a spacious place, but after all, it was built in the middle of the mountain. No matter how spacious it was, Xiao Bai was only 10 steps away from the stone door. Watching her graceful figure walking towards the door, Ghost King's expression suddenly changed. All kinds of complicated expressions intertwined together, suddenly murderous, suddenly hesitant. Just that Xiao Bai's walking speed did not slow down. 10 steps away, even though her speed was not fast, but she reached in a blink. The heavy stone door slowly opened in front of her, emitting a deep, rumbling sound. She did not turn back. Her white dress wrapped around her slender and voluptuous figure, gently swaying. Where did the wind come from in this cave, in the belly of the mountain? Behind her, there was no sound until the heavy stone door closed again, separating her from that stone room. Xiao Bai stood there silently, took a deep breath, and slowly walked along the empty tunnel. Along the way, her body slowly relaxed from the tightness that she had just been secretly tensed up. Her eyes still had a mysterious sneer, but no one knew what she was thinking. Her eyes swept across the surrounding empty tunnel and suddenly landed on the rough and deep cracks on the surrounding stone walls. Then, a sneer of confirmation flashed across her face. She already knew the reason why she felt something was wrong in Ghost King's stone room. Everywhere in the majestic Fox Mountain Ghost King sect caves, there were these strange, mysterious cracks, only in Ghost King's stone room. The walls were different, perfectly intact. Ghostly landed from high up in the sky. Xiao Hui was still crouching on his shoulder, looking around. To the active Xiao Hui, there seemed to never be a moment of peace, and in the monkey's body, one could never see the word tiredness. Chapter 464. But the monkey would not tire, but its master's face looked heavy. Ghostly landed on the ground. Far away was the towering, desolate, majestic Fox Mountain, but for some reason, he did not land directly at the majestic Fox Mountain Ghost King sect cave entrance like usual. Instead, he landed at the foot of majestic Fox Mountain and then unhurriedly walked up the mountain. Ghost Li's expression was solemn, his brows tightly furrowed. Maybe even he himself had forgotten how long it had been since he smiled. There was a slightly heavy feeling in his chest. Ghostly did not need to use his hand to feel it. He knew what it was, the mysterious magical weapon, Qian Kuan reincarnation plate. Before this, he had never heard that there was such a magical treasure in this world, and even more did not expect that a wandering Jianghu fortune teller, Zhou Yixian, would know this extremely secretive secret even in Tianyin Temple. Just that after a little bit of hope, even more worry, anxiety, and bewilderment. Until now, he was still unable to understand this magical weapon. Come to think of it, Pewd Master as one of Tian'in Temple's 4 great holy monks also could not understand it for decades. How would Ghostly be able to solve this mystery in a short few days? But what about Bai Yao? Ghostly stopped, took a deep breath. His expression looked like he was suffocating from 1,000 caddies of heavy burden. After a long time, he suddenly laughed bitterly, again strided up the mountain. How many people always said that life is like a dream, but they did not know that in this world, no matter what kind of dream, one still have to face it. Unknowingly, he had already reached the entrance of the Ghost King's sect headquarters cave. The few disciples on duty at the entrance saw his figure. First surprised, and then seemed to have thought of something. Their faces revealed great joy. All ran over. Vice Head, you are finally back. You're a step late. Xiaobai Miss came back to look for you, just left. If you still did not come back, we really do not know if we can still live to see you. A series of messy and disorderly words made Ghostly taken aback. He asked in astonishment, "What are you all talking about?" The Ghost King sect disciples these days really felt like they were trapped in a mountain of knives and a sea of fire, suffering unbearable. And in such a situation, those who were usually in charge had all disappeared. The 4 holy envoys originally had high prestige, but after Qing Long went to the southern border, there was no news of him, and he had been missing for a long time. Vermilion Bird had also long left majestic Fox Mountain. And Ghost King, who was the core of Ghost King's sect, was unexpectedly indifferent. Ghost King's sect was really in a mess, if not for the strict evil sect rules. Everyone was really afraid of punishment and dare not escape. Otherwise, this majestic Fox Mountain would really become an empty mountain. Ghostly used to have a high position in Ghost King's sect, although he usually treated others coldly, but towards the ordinary Ghost King sect disciples, he had never bullied or humiliated them. The group of Ghost King sect disciples secretly respected this taciturn deputy sect head very much. Right now, at this critical moment, suddenly seeing Ghostly, it was like sending charcoal in snowy weather. If not for these people who were immersed in fear and unable to extricate themselves from it, would be ecstatic. Listening to the disciples arguing incessantly, Ghostly indifferently lowered his head, stretched out his hand, and gently touched his chest. The Qian Kun reincarnation plate through the black cloth indistinctly emitted a faint warmth. Enough! Suddenly, he coldly said. The surrounding Ghost King sect disciples were stunned. Ghostly silently used his hands to push the disciples away, walked towards the mountain. Someone shouted behind him, Vice Head, don't tell me even you are not going to care about us? Ghostly's body stopped for a moment, and then his deep and suppressed voice was heard slowly saying, 10 years, I tried my best, and still could not save Bai Yao. I even looked down on myself. What ability do I have to save others? He continued to stride forward. Looking at him from behind, he looked desolate, completely without the youthful vigor that he should have right now. The Ghost King disciples behind him looked at each other. Each of their faces ashen, despair like tide, gushed in from all directions, drowning them. Ghostly walked in the mountain tunnel. He had not walked 2 steps. Suddenly the monkey, Xiao Hui, who had been crouching on his shoulder, suddenly shook. Z? A sharp cry. It stood up. At the same time, the 3 eyes on its face faintly glowed with golden light, as if facing a great enemy. Ghostly frowned, carried Xiao Hui down, quietly asked, Xiao Hui, what is it? Xiao Hui, Zizi, called out a few times. Its expression seemed to be nervous. At the same time, its arms waved to both sides. Ghostly's eyes focused and followed the direction of Xiao Hui's finger. His expression gradually turned cold. The place where Xiao Hui's finger was pointing, on the originally solid stone wall, many strange, deep, mysterious cracks appeared. Ghostly slowly placed Xiao Hui back on his shoulder, at the same time again strided forward, unhurriedly walked forward. Xiao Hui crouched on Ghostly's shoulder, its 3 eyes opened wide, its face vigilant as it carefully observed the surroundings. This tunnel, which used to be crowded with people, right now, only Ghostly and Xiao Hui were there. The usual Ghost King disciples were all gone. In the empty passageway, one after another, as Ghostly's figure slowly moved forward, The mysterious cracks on the stone walls on both sides of the passageway became denser and thicker. A strange aura started to pervade Ghost Lee's surroundings. Like in The Invisible, some monster in the dark opened its eyes, watching them. An indistinct stench of blood faintly drifted in the empty tunnel. Ghost Lee's footsteps became slower and slower. His gaze looked from one crack to another. His gaze also became deeper and sharper. Here, something really happened. He suddenly stopped, as if recalling something. In that instant, his face turned pale. This strange, unknown force enveloped majestic Fox Mountain and Bayou was still lying in the cold stone chamber deep in the tunnel. The next moment, Ghost Lee's figure like lightning shot out, even making a sharp, piercing sound in the quiet tunnel, instantly disappeared at the end of the tunnel. Rumble! The heavy sound of the stone door once again reverberated in the tunnel. Ghost Lee anxiously stood at the entrance of the cold stone chamber. Almost the moment the door opened to a gap that could allow one person to pass through, he had already dashed in. The dreamlike white smoke was still emitting from that cold stone platform. Drifting in the air, a green figure with a faint tranquil smile was still quietly lying there. Ghost Lee quietly stood at the door. After a long while, he heaved a long sigh. The nervous expression on his face slowly calmed down. He looked at Bayou for a long while, slowly walked up, came to the side of the stone platform, watched this beautiful girl who was still as beautiful as before, quietly said, "I am back, Bayou." No answer. What answered him was a stretch of cold silence. Ghost Lee's lips moved slightly. A trace of sorrow flashed past his eyes. He sat down beside the cold stone platform, glanced around, discovered that for some reason, this cold stone room was different from the cracks in the passageways outside. The surrounding stone walls were undamaged, not a single crack. Ghost Lee frowned slightly, a puzzled look in his eyes, but right now he did not seem to be in the mood to investigate. Very quickly, his attention and eyes were focused on Bayou, who was lying on the stone platform. He slowly took out an item wrapped in a black cloth from his bosom. He slowly untied the black cloth, revealing the warm and lustrous Chien Kuan reincarnation disc. The soft white light spread out, flashing across Bailu's pale face. "Bayou," Ghost Lee softly called out. But before he could continue, a cold and dignified voice suddenly came from the stone door of the stone room behind him. "Wait." Ghost Lee frowned, turned and looked at the door. Ghost King clasped his hands behind his back, standing at the door, his eyes as sharp as knives, staring at the Chien Kuan reincarnation plate in Ghost Lee's hand. Coldly said, "The thing in your hand, what is it?" Chapter 465. Majestic Fox Mountain Ghost King Sect Cave Depths, Blood Pool. The huge space was still shrouded by a strong smell of blood, and the steaming smell of blood had even dyed the hard stone walls into a bright red color. In the blood pool that constantly bubbled from the depths of the blood water, the four ancient spiritual beasts all looked tired and powerless, soaking in the blood pool. The dark red light that shot down from the mysterious hidden dragon cauldron in the sky right now looked much dimmer than before. But on the contrary, the hidden dragon cauldron suspended in the air was overflowing with spiritual light, full of vigor. Even those mysterious inscriptions on the cauldron were already glowing, and the strange evil demon head engraved on the cauldron had already completely turned blood red, indistinctly a strange power circling above it. In the huge cavern where the blood pool was located, apart from the occasional sound of bubbles bursting in the blood pool, there was no other sound. However, when one was in it, he felt as if he was in a turbulent whirlpool. An invisible but unparalleled force had awakened from the darkness, growing stronger bit by bit as it peeped into this world. There was no wind, but his clothes were fluttering. Mr. Ghost right now clearly felt the cold, bloody power circling around his body, just that other than the unusual heat in his eyes, there was no trace of fear. His eyes moved away from the hidden dragon cauldron in the air, slowly looked around the huge cave. This was clearly the source of that mysterious bloody power in Ghost King's sect. Under that increasingly powerful power and unceasingly expanding, even the various tunnels in the Ghost King sect cave were riddled with scars. The stone walls here naturally could not withstand it. A huge, ghastly crack suddenly appeared on the ceiling of the cave. It split from top to bottom, and the largest crack was 10 feet wide, while the smallest one was more than 3 feet wide. The hard stone wall was like a thin piece of paper in front of this crack, and it was easily torn apart. It looked like some ancient god had split the mountains and split the seas with a violent power that could break the heavens. Today, Ghost King did not come to the blood pool, but Mr. Ghost knew the reason. Ghost King had gone to see that thousand-year, nine-tailed celestial fox who had unexpectedly returned a few days ago. With the nine-tailed celestial fox's 1,000 years of skills, most likely it would discover the various strange situations in Ghost King's sect. But when Mr. Ghost thought of this, he coldly smiled under the black veil, clearly not taking it to heart. The next moment, his eyes again returned to the hidden dragon cauldron. Scarlet red light flashed, seemed to have a special frequency, like a strange panting. That evil face's blood-red eyes glimmered, seemed to be staring at Mr. Ghost with piercing eyes. Azura! Mr. Ghost softly shouted these strange words, slowly knelt down, spread out his hands, and prostrated on the ground. The strange light in the air seemed to be even more intense. Just that at this quiet moment, suddenly, the hidden dragon cauldron's red light wavered, as if it was stimulated by something. And then before Mr. Ghost could react, he felt a sudden shock beside his ears. A formless sound wave like a raging wave whizzed past. Even with his skills, he still felt a faint pain, and that mysterious, enormous power which was quietly spiraling in the huge cave suddenly seemed to freeze. Then strange whistling sounds gradually sounded, with an angry roar. This strange situation, even Mr. Ghost did not expect it, did not understand. He jumped up, stared intently at the hidden dragon cauldron in the air. After carefully scrutinizing it, his eyes suddenly froze. The evil demon face, which had completely turned blood red, right now in the middle of its forehead, for some reason, a small dot emitting faint white, gentle light. This dot of white light was naturally completely disproportionate to the bloody stench that enveloped the entire cave. The disparity was too great, but for some reason, not only that mysterious power from the hidden dragon cauldron was unable to remove it, even under the sky full of roars and shocking power shrouding the bloody light, that dot of white light, still shone, did not seem to weaken. Mr. Ghost's body shook greatly. His face drained of blood. He cried out, "Chien Kuen Lok! How is it possible?" As if the sudden blow was too big, Mr. Ghost, who had always been calm, actually lost his composure, anxiously paced to and fro on the platform below the hidden dragon cauldron, muttering to himself, "Impossible, impossible! How can there be such ancient divine prohibition on the hidden dragon cauldron? What is going on? What is going on?" Suddenly, his body stiffened again, almost at the same time when he sharply sensed it. The mysterious white light in the middle of the hidden dragon cauldron suddenly brightened. A gentle white light shot out, like a sharp dagger, in the sky, full of blood-red light. It seemed especially glaring. Looking from afar, that white dagger seemed to be stabbed right in the middle of that evil demon face's forehead, tightly nailed onto that face. All of a sudden, a sharp whistling sound rang throughout the entire cavern. The red light that filled the sky began to spin rapidly, and a powerful force filled the entire space. The stone walls surrounding the cavern began to tremble, and boulders began to fall one after another. In the middle of the blood pool, countless giant whirlpools appeared on the surface of the blood pool. The four spiritual beasts weakly raised their heads to look at the sky, not knowing what to do. The sharp whistling sound became sharper and sharper, like a furious roar, from all directions in the cave towards the hidden dragon cauldron suspended in the air. In the eye of the storm, the evil demon face's blood-red light trembled violently, looked extremely distorted, extremely ferocious. However, under the terrifying force, in the surrounding surging waves of blood-red light, that faint white light stood proudly. That terrifying force looked like it could destroy the heaven and earth, but could do nothing to that white light. No matter how the blood-red light attacked from all directions, in the end, under Mr. Ghost's bloodshot eyes, that white dagger was still stabbed into the evil demon's face. After an unknown period of time, This terrifying force finally weakened. The rapidly spinning blood-red light gradually calmed down. The strange sounds in the blood pool cave also slowly quietened down. In Mr. Ghost's despairing eyes, the blood-red evil demon face, which was already close to success, was actually forced by that seemingly gentle white dagger, and the entire cauldron's blood-red light also dimmed a lot. How is it possible? How is it possible? With some desolation, Mr. Ghost stood blankly on the platform, looked like dead, lifeless. The mysterious force on the cauldron he had spent his entire life's effort to pursue. To say it was entrusted by his life was not an exaggeration. Who would have thought that just when he was about to succeed, such a shocking change would occur? Not right. Not right. The matter has not been utterly defeated. Cannot be anxious. Cannot be anxious. Mr. Ghost was, after all, not an ordinary person. Inhaled deeply, forced himself to calm down. His mind started to think rapidly. Although the mysterious force on the cauldron was suppressed by the ancient divine prohibition Qian lock, but clearly it had not been utterly defeated, just that the vital points were tightly sealed and unable to be broken. As long as this Qian lock was broken, naturally, it would be a success. Just that although Mr. Ghost thought highly of himself, but he was not arrogant enough to think that he could break the ancient divine method. It was said that this supreme ancient divine method was used by the ancient deities to seal the heaven and earth evil spirits. Other than a few ancient divine weapons, it was not something a human could break. However, the so-called ancient godly weapons had never been passed down to the human world. Even someone like him, who was almost omniscient and knowledgeable, had never heard of them before. He only knew that there was such a saying that had been passed down since ancient times. At this time, where could he go to find the ancient godly weapons? With that thought, Mr. Ghost's body wavered. Suddenly, with a loud cry, spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood red landed on the platform, exceptionally glaring. In the cold stone chamber, Ghost Lee and Ghost King looked at each other silently. Ghost King's expression was solemn, his eyes sharp. Ghost Lee's face was more indifferent. The Jade plate in your hand, what is it? Why did you bring it to Bai Yao? Ghost King coldly asked. Ghost Lee did not answer, looked back at Bai Yao. After a long while he slowly said, I want to save her. Ghost King frowned. A glint flashed in his eyes, quickly walked up and said, This magical weapon can save Yao. Ghost Lee looked at the Qian Kun reincarnation plate glimmering with gentle white light, suddenly laughed bitterly and said, I don't know. Ghost King was startled, said, What do you mean? Ghost Lee was silent for a moment, said, I only heard that this magical weapon has special effects. Maybe there's hope to save Bai Yao, so I want to borrow it, but as for what it is, I also don't know. Ghost King took a look at the Qian Kun reincarnation plate. His eyes narrowed. Obviously, he was also a little surprised by the strange appearance of this jade plate, but with his knowledge, he had never heard of this magical weapon, frowned and said, What is this magical weapon called? Ghost Lee said, This plate is called Qian Kun Reincarnation Plate. It is said to be able to stabilize the soul, decide life and death, but as for what it is... Pewed Master's withered look flashed in his mind. With a bitter laugh, said, As for what it is, nobody knows. Ghost King's face flashed with anger. Red veins indistinctly appeared in his eyes, hiding a hint of murderous intent, but after a moment, he looked at Bai Yao. That gentle smile reflected in his eyes. As if something was stirred, his eyes finally softened again. Maybe at this moment, only Bai Yao could make him temporarily calm down. That treasure is not an ordinary item. Ghost King suddenly said, I can tell, although I have never heard of this magical treasure, but this item is of extraordinary quality. The brilliance is pure and does not dissipate. It is definitely not an ordinary item. Quickly try it. Maybe it will have a miraculous effect. Speaking till the end, his voice gradually deepened. Obviously, in this entire 10 years, he and Ghost Lee had suffered numerous setbacks and failures, although there was still a trace of hope in their hearts, but both of them knew that was after all only a tiny trace of hope. Ghost Lee silently nodded, held the plate in his hands, went near Bai Yao. The white soft light flowed, but there was no change. Ghost Lee tried his luck and injected the quintessential essence in his body into the jade plate. However, The Chinquan Samsara plate was like a deep ocean. The quintessential essence was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no sound, and there was no change on the jade plate. Ghostly was dispirited, but he was not surprised. In fact, on his way back to majestic Fox Mountain, he had tried numerous ways to test this jade plate, including this kind of energy input method, but all of them ended in failure. To think that Pewd Master of Tianyin Temple had studied this treasure for several decades, but did not find anything, to say that the methods that Ghostly could think of in these few days. Most likely Pewd Master would have tried no less than 100 times. Actually, it was not that Ghostly did not understand these, just that no matter what he could not let go of that tiny hope of saving Bai Yao. He could only try with all his might, hoping that heaven would pity him and a miracle would appear, but in the end, it still ended in failure. Ghostly woodenly hung his head, sat blankly. Disappointment flashed past Ghost King's face, but he did not scold and did not personally take that strange jade plate over to take a look, although both of them were not on good terms recently. But how Ghostly treated Bai Yao. Ghost King naturally knew in his heart, as long as there was a trace of hope, Ghostly would definitely not give it up. This time, naturally, he had tried all kinds of methods. He heaved a long sigh, looked like he had aged a few more times, silently shook his head, and was about to leave. Suddenly he paused, as if recalling something, suddenly turned and urgently said to Ghostly, "Try to put Huan Bell and that jade plate together." Ghostly was surprised, and then came to his senses. A trace of nervousness flashed past his face. He went near Bai Yao, stretched out his hand, and gently pried open Bai Yao's crossed palms on her chest. Where his hand touched, he felt that although the skin was still smooth and plump, but it was extremely cold. Ghostly's heart ached, did not dare to think anymore. Carefully took out the Huan Bell from Bai Yao's hand. Chapter 466. The golden Huan Bell swayed gently, emitting a clear sound. Faint light flashed past, like a beautiful lover's eyes, watching him. Ghostly held the Qian Kun reincarnation plate in one hand, the Huan Bell in the other, gently placed it on the plate. Those strange little pieces of jade in the Qian Kun reincarnation plate silently slid. Mountains and rivers, stars in the sky, indistinctly all within. Under the gazes of Ghost, Li, and Ghost King, the Huan Bell gradually entered the space above the reincarnation plate. When it was only a foot away from the plate, Ghostly suddenly seemed to feel something. He frowned, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Ghost King immediately felt it, stared at him, and said, "What is it?" Ghostly did not speak, only breathed deeply, and then when the Huan Bell was one chi away from the plate, he suddenly released his fingers. Ghost King was shocked. In the soft white radiance of the heaven and earth reincarnation plate, the Huan Bell surprisingly did not fall. It seemed to be faintly lifted up by some invisible force, slowly rising and falling in the white radiance. After a moment, the melodious sound of the bell rang out. Ghost Li and Ghost King both revealed a look of surprise. But at this crucial moment, before their surprise could last for a moment, the entire cold stone chamber, no, the entire majestic Fox Mountain suddenly shook violently. An enormous and terrifying invisible force carrying a thick stench of blood suddenly burst out from the bottom of their feet, like some huge beast was agitated, roaring furiously, trying to break free. Ghost Li and Ghost King's expressions changed at the same time. The difference was Ghost Li was stunned. Ghost King's eyes were filled with anger. Pa 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 pa. An ear-piercing sound was heard from all directions at the same time. Ghost Li and Ghost King turned to look. The stone walls of the stone chamber, which were still intact, finally could not withstand the sudden uncontrollable power explosion. The four walls cracked at the same time. The cracks could be seen extending at a visible speed, and at the same time, the ground beneath their feet started to shake violently. There was really a kind of heaven and earth collapsing. The illusion of doomsday. Outside the stone chamber, cries of terror were heard everywhere, accompanied by even louder sounds. Without looking, Ghost Li and Ghost King both knew the situation outside would only be worse than in the stone chamber, but right now, they did not have the mind to care. Ghost Li clenched his teeth, held up the Qian Kun reincarnation plate, near Bai Yao. At the same time, The Hehuan bell trembled lightly. The clear ringing seemed so different from the surrounding sounds. Although weak but to Ghost Lee and Ghost King's ears, this sound was even louder than the real heaven falling and earth splitting. In the white and gentle light of the Qian Kun reincarnation plate, the Hehuan bell floated up and down in the air, trembling more and more violently. The ringing also alternated between fast and slow, indistinctly sounding in pain. Ghost Lee and Ghost King both had perspiration on their foreheads, did not even dare to blink, stared at the trembling Hehuan bell. Suddenly, the huge and strange power around them disappeared in an instant, and the reverberating roars stopped as well. Only the echoes that reverberated in the distance still lingered on the traces of the drastic change. Like a whale sucking in water, the terrifying power quickly retracted. This moment was when Mr. Ghost in the blood pool deep inside the majestic Fox Mountain Cave saw the ancient divine method Qian Kun lock displaying its power, forcefully sealed the hidden dragon cauldron. And in front of Ghostly and Ghost King, there was an unexpected change. Originally, the Hehuan bell in the Qian Kun reincarnation plate's light had a strange change, indistinctly showing signs of breaking free, but the Qian Kun reincarnation plate itself did not have the slightest change. But when that force suddenly disappeared, the Qian Kun reincarnation plate seemed to sense something, indistinctly an invisible force calling out. The gentle white light suddenly exploded. Ghostly and Ghost King's body shook greatly, exclaimed, "What?" The white light on the plate instantly became dazzling, almost hard to look at, and the speed of the innumerable small jade pieces in the middle of the plate actually increased by more than 10 times. The innumerable jade pieces slid and dashed, complicated and difficult to distinguish, and the strange characters carved on each piece, one by one, also lit up. And following the change of the Qian Kun reincarnation plate, the trembling Hehuan bell swiftly quieted down. Even the ringing also slowed down. Very soon it was silent. Ghost King panicked, angrily said, "What is going on?" Ghostly was also extremely anxious, clenched his teeth, and said, "I also don't understand." The two of them watched as the Cosmos reincarnation plate grew brighter and brighter. In the end, even the constellations and river patterns carved on the jade plate seemed to come to life. The entire Cosmos reincarnation plate seemed to have a life of its own. It whistled incessantly, as if it was calling out to something or responding to something in the distance. Amidst the brilliant brilliance, the joyous Union bell seemed to have received a heavy blow. In the air, it lightly trembled, as if it had completely lost the support of its strength, falling from the air. With a paw sound, it landed on the jade plate. After rolling a few times, there was no more movement. Ghost Lee and Ghost King stared blankly at the Hehuan bell in the Qian Kun reincarnation plate, their faces ashen. The movement underground had already calmed down for a long time, and the Qian Kun reincarnation plate, which had suddenly changed, also returned to its original appearance. There was no more dazzling light, but under the white soft light, the Hehuan bell seemed to have lost its vitality. No matter how Ghostly tried, there was no more reaction. Ghost King's face was dark and ugly, but the initial anger had already disappeared from his face. Replacing it was that cold indifference. He silently watched Ghostly again and again, trying with the slightest hope, and then again and again witnessing his failure. Finally, he slowly straightened his body, closed his eyes, stood for a while, and then, without a word, quietly turned and left this cold stone room. The stone door slowly closed. There was a huge crack on the thick and hard stone, as if it had been torn apart. In the quiet stone room, Ghostly finally slowly stopped his futile attempts, woodenly sat beside the stone platform, motionless. After an unknown period of time, Ghostly slowly picked up the Hehuan bell from the Qian Kun reincarnation plate, gently placed it back in Bai Yao's hands, and then carefully crossed Bai Yao's hands in front of her chest like before. His every movement was extremely careful and gentle, as if afraid if he used a little strength, he would hurt this sleeping girl. He stared at Bai Yao's face, as if in a daze. After a long while, his low, hoarse voice was heard, said, "Sorry, Bai Yao, I was not able to save you again," after leaving the cold stone room. Ghost King's expression changed greatly. His indifferent expression was instantly replaced by a wave of ruthlessness. His eyes also revealed a murderous look, making one fearful. He looked around coldly and saw that the passageway was riddled with scars, obviously caused by the sudden explosion of the mysterious power just now. The stone walls, which were already full of cracks, now looked even more fragile. Not to mention the new cracks. Many of the original cracks had also widened. It was a ghastly sight, almost giving the illusion that the cave was about to collapse. And at the far end of the tunnel, indistinctly many Ghost King sect disciples could be seen running, shouting, and shouting. Evidently, they were greatly frightened. Ghost King's face turned even more furious, turned and strode away. His figure in a blink had already disappeared deep into the tunnel. After a short while, Ghost King had already reached the blood pool deep in the cave. In a huge blood pool space, the thick stench of blood still assailed the nostrils, but the red light, which once filled the sky, strangely, had already weakened a lot. Ghost King frowned, and then saw Mr. Ghost's black figure standing alone on the platform. Without even thinking, he strode over, came behind Mr. Ghost, coldly said, "What is going on? When I left it was still fine. Why did the hidden dragon cauldron's divine power suddenly go out of control so badly?" Mr. Ghost's body moved slightly, but he did not turn and did not speak. Ghost King became even more furious, coldly snorted. A murderous look flashed past his face, said, "Let me tell you, most likely it was because the divine power went out of control or caused my Yaoer's treatment to be damaged. You have been watching here all along. If you do not give me a reason, don't blame me for being heartless." Speaking till the end, Ghost King's voice was already stern. Mr. Ghost did not even need to turn his head to feel a murderous intent like a sharp blade charging at his back, but he did not show any panic. Instead, with a tired tone, gently pointed at the hidden dragon cauldron, weakly, quietly said, "Sect head, why don't you take a look at the hidden dragon cauldron first?" Ghost King looked up, but for a moment did not see anything. The hidden dragon cauldron was already floating in the air. The surroundings were still crimson red. Immediately said, "What did you ask me to look at? Isn't everything fine?" Halfway through his words, he suddenly choked and could not continue. Both of his eyes seemed to freeze, staring intently at the hidden dragon cauldron in the sky. In the crimson light, on the evil face of the hidden dragon cauldron floating in the air, a beam of strange white light appeared in the middle of its forehead, like a light dagger stabbed into the demon's head, and the demon's face, which had already turned completely blood red. The red around the dagger all faded. The entire area above its eyes again reverted to the original pale green color of the hidden dragon cauldron. Ghost King's countenance changed greatly. Swiftly turned and spoke to Mr. Ghost. "What happened?" Mr. Ghost sighed. In a deep voice said, "Originally everything was fine. Looked like this hidden dragon cauldron for divinity's blood formation was about to be completed. Who knew today when the formation was operating to the perfect state? The moment the Azura gathered, this restriction was suddenly produced from the cauldron, locked onto the lifeline of the ancient cauldron, forcibly dispersed the blood energy that was originally gathered. In the meantime, the Azura divine power of the blood formation was unwilling to be restrained and counterattacked. Even I found it difficult to control, who knew it still could not do anything to this divine restriction. Instead, the Azura power was forced to have nowhere to vent, clashing and reverberating everywhere. That was why it lost control." Ghost King inhaled a breath of cold air, turned and stared at that seemingly weak and fragile light beam. After staring for a long while, then quietly said, "What kind of prohibition is this? How can it have such power to actually be able to seal the divine power of the hidden dragon cauldron, which can destroy heaven and earth?" Mr. Ghost hesitated for a moment, said, "I am also not completely sure, but most likely it is a kind of ancient divine restriction, Chien Kuan Lock." "Chien Kuan Lock?" Ghost King frowned and quietly repeated, "How come I have never heard of it before?" Mr. Ghost shook his head and said, "This kind of divine restriction has never appeared in the world before. Since ancient times, it was only mentioned vaguely in some remnant ancient books. No one really believed that it really exists." Speaking until here, Mr. Ghost paused, looked at Ghost King, Ghost King was still staring fixedly at that thin light dagger in the air, but his expression was already extremely ugly. Mr. Ghost secretly sighed in his heart, and continued. It is said that this kind of divine restriction is specially used by ancient deities to seal evil demons. Not human can remove it, unless we can find another ancient celestial weapon. Then there is some hope. Ghost King's body shook slightly, turned and said, "What ancient celestial weapon?" Mr. Ghost bitterly laughed, said, "Even I don't know about this." Ghost King angrily said, "Then isn't everything that we have done for this four divinities' blood formation wasted?" Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, unhurriedly said, "From what I see, this blood pool surrounding blood formation's spiritual energy has not dispersed. The blood energy is still abundant. Even the Azura power in the hidden dragon cauldron is gathered and not dispersed. Just that it is temporarily dormant. It can be seen that this four divinities' blood formation is still there, and most likely it is only half a step away from completion. The problem is that this Qian Kuan lock that suddenly appeared just happened to seal the hidden dragon cauldron's energy channels, cutting off the spiritual energy between the four divinities' blood formation and the hidden dragon cauldron. The blood energy cannot enter the hidden dragon cauldron. Azura power also cannot break out. That is why this predicament is now. Chapter 467. Ghost King's expression changed rapidly. All kinds of expressions kept changing, but that gush of violent energy, almost like it had taken form, wave after wave, surged towards Mr. Ghost. Mr. Ghost's black veil moved without wind, but his body was still standing far away, quietly watching Ghost King. After a long time, Ghost King suddenly inhaled a long breath. His expression slowly calmed down. Even his tone also calmed down, coldly said, "Then what do you think we should do now?" Mr. Ghost secretly heaved a sigh of relief, said, "Now, the most important thing is naturally this Qian Kuan lock. As long as we resolve it, we can succeed in one move." Ghost King said, "What do you intend to do?" Mr. Ghost hesitated for a moment, said, "If there is that legendary ancient divine weapon, that would naturally be the best, but it seems that the hope is not great. But I think although this Qian Kuan lock is powerful, but it is very different from the legends passed down since ancient times. The hidden dragon cauldron is an ancient object, most likely not even 10,000 years old. Even if the Qian Kuan lock is an ancient divine way, its power unparalleled, but after hundreds and thousands of years, no matter what it will be worn down, as long as we observe carefully, it may not be impossible to crack." Ghost King was silent for a moment, slowly nodded. His expression also gradually eased. After a moment of silence, as if he recalled something, his face turned gloomy. With a long sigh, said, "Don't tell me it is all fate?" Mr. Ghost was surprised, did not understand, said, "What?" Ghost King gave a bitter laugh. The viciousness on his face was gone. With some helplessness and bitterness, shook his head and said, "Nothing. Now I will have to trouble you a little more." Speaking, without waiting for Mr. Ghost's reply, he turned and left the blood pool. Mr. Ghost looked from behind. Ghost King's tall figure, for some reason, looked tired and slightly bent, as if on his shoulders and heart there was always 1,000 caddies of heavy burden pressing down, and he seemed to be more and more strained. Ghostly pushed open the stone door and returned to his residence. The stone door slowly closed behind him, making a low sound, but Ghostly did not seem to feel anything. His eyes were blank and lifeless, and he did not even know how he returned to this place. His mind was completely blank. Perhaps even he himself did not want to think of anything else. The four walls of the room he resided in were also filled with cracks, some thick and some thin, some deep and some shallow. Small stones occasionally fell from the rough cracks. Clearly this place also did not escape the corrosion of that mysterious power in the blood pool deep inside the majestic Fox Mountain Cave. But Ghostly turned a blind eye to all of this. He fell head first onto the bed, lying there motionless. His hands seemed to have lost all strength. A round object wrapped in black cloth gently slid down from his hands, silently landed on the bed beside him. A gray shadow flashed. The monkey Xiao Hui jumped over from the side and landed on Ghostly's body, but Ghostly was still lying there motionless, without any reaction. Xiao Hui felt puzzled, stretched its head to look at Ghostly's head, Ghostly's eyes were tightly shut, his face pale. Xiao Hui's 3 eyes blinked, seemed to know something, called out twice, and then quietened down. Did not disturb Ghostly. Also jumped down from Ghostly's body, sat on the bed with its back against its master's body, did not say a word. In the stone room, it sank into silence. Not knowing how long had passed, Ghostly was still motionless. Xiao Hui looked worriedly at its master, but seemed hesitant to disturb. The monkey head turned around and suddenly saw something wrapped in black cloth lying quietly on the bed not far away. Xiao Hui's 3 eyes blinked, looked for a while, and then turned to look at Ghostly, saw that he was still lying there quietly. Xiao Hui's tail gently swayed, scratched its own head, and then its body leaned forward slightly. Its hand swiftly stretched out and grabbed that thing in its hand. The monkey flipped the black cloth-wrapped round object over and over, looked at it a few times but did not find anything. Instead, in the end, the monkey's claw accidentally lost its grip, and in addition to Ghost Lee's unsettled state of mind, he carelessly wrapped it with the black cloth. It was very loose. In an instant, the black cloth fell off. A white jade plate slid out. A light sound gently landed on the bed in front of Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui was startled. Its entire body shrank back. The jade plate in front of it was rather strange. Not only was it emitting a white, gentle light, in the middle of the jade plate there were numerous tiny jade pieces moving on their own, never-ending. It was even more mystical. Xiao Hui's attention was immediately drawn over. The 3 monkey eyes did not even blink, staring at the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate, and then carefully stretched out one hand, lightly touched the side of the plate. The Qian Kuan reincarnation plate quietly slid to the side. Xiao Hui's hand also quickly retracted. It looked like the monkey was testing this strange plate, but it seemed like there was no danger. Xiao Hui placed its hand that touched the plate before its eyes, looked carefully. It was not red, nor itchy, nor painful. The monkey grinned, looked at the jade plate lying on the bed. Its head looked around, and then stretched out its hand to grab the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate. The gentle white light spilled out from the jade plate, shone on the gray-furred monkey's face. Xiao Hui stared with its 3 eyes wide open, looked at the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate. The numerous small jade pieces in the plate were still quietly sliding, like the flow of time, never stopping. Slowly, Xiao Hui seemed to be mesmerized. Its 3 eyes got closer and closer to the jade plate. Its eyes also kept staring at the numerous strange jade pieces that were moving ceaselessly. Those tiny things reflected in its 3 eyes, indistinctly turned into the innumerable stars in the firmament. Suddenly, Xiao Hui's body slanted. For some reason, it actually left Ghost Lee's body, inexplicably came to the edge of the bed without knowing it. This time it stepped on empty air. Xiao Hui immediately fell off the bed and landed on the ground. Xiao Hui immediately made a low cry, and then like a spring, it jumped up. Luckily, its grip was tight. The Qian Kuan reincarnation plate was firmly held in its hands and did not fall to the ground. Xiao Hui looked left, and right after it jumped up, its 3 eyes rolled back at the same time. One hand casually grabbed the jade plate and hung it by its side. The other hand rubbed its head. Obviously also bewildered, it was clearly sitting beside its master just now. Why did it suddenly fall down from the bed? Xiao Hui tilted its head and thought for a long time. In the end, it still could not figure it out. Felt a little dejected, but the monkey was lively by nature and did not stay dispirited for too long. It looked up at the bed. Ghostly was still the same and did not move. It simply sat down on the floor again, placed the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate in front of it. In the white light, the mystical little jade pieces were still moving. But this time, Xiao Hui did not get sucked in like before. Its eyeballs turned one round, suddenly grinned, and instead raised its other hand, stretched out a finger, and stretched out towards those little pieces of jade in the middle of the jade plate. In a gentle white light, the monkey's finger quietly stretched out. Suddenly, it tapped on one of the small jade pieces. However, these jade pieces seemed to have their own hidden potential. They were not affected by the pressure of the monkey's finger and continued to slide forward without the slightest pause. Xiao Hui was stunned for a moment. Not only did it not seem angry, instead it looked happy, as if it had found something fun. The second time it stretched out its hand to press the other small jade piece. As expected, it also did not manage to press it. The monkey became more and more excited. It squeaked a few times and repeatedly extended its finger to touch and press the small pieces of jade on the jade plate. It was having a great time playing with them. Under the faint white light, the monkey looked so happy. Just that after pressing for a while, Xiao Hui also seemed to feel bored. Suddenly stretched out its finger and pressed hard on one of the small jade pieces. This time the strength was not as light as before. It was rather heavy. Xiao Hui was an unusual species and had followed Ghostly for many years. Its skills were actually not to be underestimated. With this press, immediately the situation was different from before. That small jade piece was actually pressed down by it. The jade piece still showed signs of struggling, trying to break free and continue to slide forward. But Xiao Hui's face was excited. The strength of its fingers increased after a few futile struggles. That small jade piece finally stopped. Pooh! A deep muffled sound immediately resounded in the jade plate. Startled Xiao Hui turned to look. This small jade piece had stopped moving, but the other jade pieces were not. The next moment, another small jade piece slid over and hit that jade piece. The two jade pieces collided. Looked like nothing happened, but immediately a change occurred. The gentle white light on the Qiankuan reincarnation plate suddenly lit up, and it was not over yet. Almost at the same time, incessant sounds, side after side, pieces after pieces of jade started to collide. More and more jade pieces stopped sliding, and the white light on the plate also became brighter and brighter. In the end, it was even 10 times brighter than what Ghostly had seen in the cold stone chamber, totally unable to look at it. Like the scorching sun in the sky had shone into this small stone chamber. The splendor shot out in all directions. Xiao Hui stared in bewilderment, looked at the jade plate in its hand. Even with its exceptional talent, right now it seemed unable to withstand this glaring light. Stepped back, its hand loosened. The Qiankuan reincarnation plate with a sound fell to the ground. However, the abnormality did not disappear with Xiao Hui's release. The plate still continued to radiate glaring but silent light, and in the innumerable brilliant lights, scenes of mysterious patterns slowly started to appear. Xiao Hui, like it was on fire, jumped up and hid in the corner of the stone chamber, but seemed to be unable to suppress its curiosity, kept turning back to look, and on the bed, Ghostly did not seem to sense the strange changes in the stone chamber, still lying there unmoving. And the most surprising and unexpected thing actually did not happen in this stone chamber. Far away from Ghostly's stone chamber, in the Bloodpool Cave, Mr. Ghost was sitting cross-legged on the platform, his eyes closed in deep thought. And above his head, the hidden dragon cauldron floated in midair. That ancient divine restriction light dagger was still tightly nailed to the body of the cauldron between the demon's forehead. Although it looked weak, it was still there. And at this moment, even Mr. Ghost did not notice. That white light on the cauldron suddenly changed. It slowly became brighter, following the brightness of the light. The blood-red energy under the demon's eyes was forced back a few degrees, landed around the nose bridge. The blood energy swirled on the demon's face. Looking from afar, it seemed even more distorted and also looked even more ferocious and furious. As time passed, that light seemed to be awakened brighter and brighter, like it was responding to something. On the platform, Mr. Ghost's body moved, seemed to sense something, but he could not be sure. After a moment of hesitation, he slowly opened his eyes, looked up at the hidden dragon cauldron. Chapter 468. Ghostly's body moved slightly, slowly woke up from his dazed state, flipped over and sat up on the bed, but still felt a little dizzy. With his current high skills, it was really rare to see such a situation. But Ghostly did not seem to mind this at all, composed himself, heaved a long sigh, and turned around. Suddenly he was surprised. A jade plate was lying on the stone floor, emitting a gentle white glow. It was the Qiankuan reincarnation plate. And Xiao Hui the monkey was also crouching beside the jade plate, seemed to be curious about it, looking left and right. A few times it tried to stretch out its hand to touch the plate, but every time it would retract halfway, as if it was afraid of the jade plate. Ghostly frowned, concentrated, and pondered for a while, but he could not recall if he had dropped the plate or not. Not only that, he could not even remember how he came back from the cold stone chamber. Most likely it was because he was too disappointed and his mental state was not up to par. Ghostly was silent and then gave a bitter laugh, sighed, and quietly got off the bed, bent down to pick up the Qian Kun reincarnation plate from the ground. Xiao Hui sat on the ground, raised its head and looked at Ghostly, its three eyes bright and full of expression, not knowing what it was thinking. Ghostly gently waved to the monkey, said, "Come here, Xiao Hui." Xiao Hui, easy, called out twice and jumped over. In a few leaps, it was already on Ghostly's body, but it seemed to still be wary of the Qian Kun reincarnation plate in Ghostly's hand. In the end, it did not stay in Ghostly's embrace, and instead jumped onto Ghostly's shoulder, sat down, and then looked at the jade plate in Ghostly's hand. Ghostly did not think too much, stretched out his hand and caressed Xiao Hui's body. In this world, only this monkey would always stay by his side. After a while, his gaze fell on the Qian Kun Samsara plate again. In the soft white light, the jade plate was still the same as before. In the center of the jade plate, the countless small jade pieces were still following their own magical and unique tracks, endlessly gliding, as if nothing had happened. Ghostly silently stared at the jade plate in his hand. The white light from the jade plate also shone on his face, just that he did not know what kind of secret was in it, deeply hidden. Ghostly looked for a long time, eventually shook his head gently. A trace of disappointment flashed across his face, took the black cloth, wrapped the Qian Kun reincarnation plate properly, and placed it back into his bosom. Xiao Hui, who was lying on Ghostly's shoulder, had been watching Ghostly's movements. When Ghostly put the jade plate back into his bosom, Xiao Hui suddenly called out. Ghostly turned his head, puzzled, frowned, and said, "What is it, Xiao Hui?" Xiao Hui scratched its head, but seemed to be unable to tell what was wrong or important, could only spread out its hands and shrugged its shoulders. Ghostly patted Xiao Hui's head and did not mind it too much, sat for a while, and suddenly said, "Xiao Hui, how long have I been lying for?" Xiao Hui's three eyes turned, called out, and at the same time gestured with its hands. Ghostly looked at it for a while, slowly said, "It has been so long. Then let's go out for a walk." He paused, stood up, and at the same time carried Xiao Hui in his bosom and gently stroked it, his expression a little dejected, but he took a long breath and indifferently said, "No matter what, we still have to live on, right?" Xiao Hui's three eyes kept turning, not knowing if it understood Ghostly's words, but Ghostly did not have the energy to ponder over it. Gently patted Xiao Hui's back. Xiao Hui conveniently climbed up his shoulder. Ghostly walked towards the stone door. In the muffled sound of the door opening, they walked out. Outside the stone room, the passageways were still extending in all directions, just that those increasingly denser and thicker cracks strongly reminded the people here that unknown strange existence and danger. Ghostly stood at the door for a while. His eyes landed on those big and small cracks on the passageway. Some of these cracks were already extremely huge from the top of the passageway to the ground, exposing the gray rocks. The originally solid stone walls after these cracks seemed to be as fragile as a thin piece of paper. Ghostly slowly walked to one of the cracks, expressionlessly stared at it for a long time. Then he looked up at the top of the passageway, frowned slightly. These cracks only appeared after he left Majestic Fox Mountain last time. Naturally, he could not understand in a moment, but when he was in the cold stone room, he clearly remembered that mysterious power that suddenly appeared. Its source was deep underground. But looking at the cracks on the surrounding walls, instead the top of the passageway was the most seriously damaged. The walls on both sides were second, and the passageway under his feet seemed to be unscathed. Other than a few small cracks, not a single big crack could be seen. Ghostly pondered for a moment, suddenly shook his head. A trace of impatience flashed past his eyes. Seemed like his state of mind was too bad. Although these cracks looked extremely strange, but he really did not have the mood to investigate further. Composing himself, Ghostly no longer looked at the crisscrossing cracks, brought Xiao Hui to one side of the passageway. The passageway stretched all the way. What was different from usual was this place was much quieter than usual. The Ghost King's sect disciples seemed to rather hide in their own rooms, and no one was willing to come out and walk in the huge passageway. Often only Ghostly's figure was left. But Ghostly clearly did not care about these. Looking at the direction he was heading, He was heading towards the entrance of the cave, not knowing if it was because he was too vexed and wanted to go out for a walk. His footsteps reverberated in the passageway. Because it was too quiet, it sounded much louder than usual. Xiao Hui, crouched on his shoulder, seemed to be unaccustomed to this kind of excessive silence. Its head turned here and there, looking around. Suddenly, Xiao Hui's head stopped, looked ahead. Ghostly also seemed to feel something at the same time. Stopped, looked ahead. The empty passageway ahead was still empty, but after a moment, there was movement. A black figure quietly drifted over. It was actually that elusive, mysterious, and unfathomable Mr. Ghost. Mr. Ghost at the same time also saw Ghostly standing alone in front. Seemed to be stunned, stopped his steps. Both of them looked at each other for a while, but did not speak. The atmosphere in the passageway turned cold and awkward. Finally, Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "When did you return?" Ghostly indifferently said, "Just returned not long ago." Mr. Ghost nodded, seemed to have nothing more to say. Anyway, he had already said a word, considered as a greeting, unhurriedly walked forward. Ghostly quietly moved aside. Just that when Mr. Ghost walked past Ghostly, he suddenly stopped. Looking at his actions, there seemed to be a rare hesitation. After a moment said, "You said you just returned not long ago?" Ghostly indifferently said, "Yes, what is it?" Mr. Ghost hesitated for a moment, seemed to be deliberating over his words. Slowly said, "Then do you sense something wrong here?" Ghostly glanced at Mr. Ghost, said, "What do you mean?" Mr. Ghost was silent again, then shook his head, indifferently said, "No, nothing. I will leave first." After speaking, he walked straight ahead, did not speak another word. Ghostly looked at his figure from behind. Mr. Ghost's black figure gradually walked further away in the passageway, drifting erratically. At a glance, he looked like a Een spirit, but his movements were much slower than usual. In Ghostly's eyes, Mr. Ghost's movements were slow and not in a straight line, from time to time leaning against the walls, especially when he reached a place with a stone room. Mr. Ghost would intentionally or unintentionally approach the stone room, pause for a moment, and then continued. For some reason, it seemed like he was looking for something. Ghostly indifferently turned around. Even if Mr. Ghost was really looking for something, to him it was also not something that he would care about. Following the original direction, Ghostly continued to walk forward. This time, he did not meet anyone along the way. Soon, he reached the entrance of the cave. When Ghostly walked out of the cave, a ray of sunlight, with some warmth, spilled onto his face. He squinted his eyes slightly, breathed deeply in the sunlight, in the light. The stone in his heart finally lightened a little. Qingyun Hill, Tongtian Peak. As the days passed, Qingyun's sect head, Reverend Daoxian, did not appear even once. With Reverend Daoxian's identity as the world's good faction leader, this naturally was not a trivial matter, and Xiao Yikai, who had been hiding this matter and secretly searching, the pressure on him was also increasing day by day. Outside Qingyun's sect, from time to time, there would be various good faction sects coming over to inquire. Those were easy to brush off, but Qingyun's sect itself had many factions. Reverend Daoxian also did not really pass the position of sect leader to Xiao Yikai, therefore many matters to handle. Xiao Yikai was rather tricky. In Qingyun's sect, various branches had always focused on Tongtian Peak, seeing that there was something fishy with their own sect head, and there was no news for many days, and the news from the main sect, other than seclusion and seclusion. In the end, seclusion could no longer be brushed off. Xiao Yikai and the rest simply said that Reverend Daoxian had already gone out to wander and relax. Nobody knew his whereabouts. Speaking of which, Xiao Yikai could not be blamed. Reverend Daoxian's current situation, among the thousands of Qingyun's sect disciples, only Small Bamboo Valley Shuiwa Master and Lu Sueki, and Big Bamboo Valley Tian Bui and Suru couple, who were originally a great help, passed away. If Shuiwa Master and Lu Sueki did not say, how would the others know about Qingyun's sect's big secret? They could only question Xiao Yikai. And, at this moment, Xiao Yikai's face showed fatigue. His entire person seemed to have lost a lot of weight. Compared to his usual smart and capable, energetic look, it was really a huge difference. One could imagine how much pressure he was shouldering right now. And he still could not rest. in the Tongtian Peak Crystal Hall, where he was at, the other 6 branches of Qing Yun sect on this day seemed to be unable to bear it any longer, came together to Tongtian Peak to ask what exactly happened to sect head. Why did he not show up for such a long time? This was something that had never happened before. Qing Yun's 6 branches, most of the leaders were present. Only Small Bamboo Valley leader, Shuewen Master, did not come. Her most famous disciple, Lu Sueki, also did not come, but Lu Sueki's senior sister Wenmin came. The rest of the leaders mostly sat in the middle. Among them, the most eye-catching one was Big Bamboo Valley leader. In the end, the position was still taken over by eldest disciple Xavion. In the crowd, Xavion was still in mourning clothes, obviously still observing mourning for his teacher and teacher's wife. His expression was also rather gloomy. Occasionally his eyes swept past the crowd, inadvertently saw Small Bamboo Valley Wenmin standing opposite him, gently nodded to him. Xavion was silent. The corner of his mouth moved slightly, forced a smile at Wenmin, but very quickly lowered his head again, obviously still immersed in grief. Wenmin's eyes flashed with sadness. Her face also looked somewhat gloomy. Although today's gathering was a gathering of the 6 branches, but the leader naturally was not Xavion. Kaheo, these new second-generation young disciples, return of the Wind Valley leaders in Xuchang, and the rest naturally were the ones who did not give way, immediately started to question Xiao Yikai. Although Xiao Yikai had been handling the sect's daily affairs for a period of time, but after all, Reverend Daoxian did not pass the position of sect head to him, so instead he had to stand and reply to these leaders, without a seat. Right now, in the middle of the hall, Qing Yun sect head Reverend's chair was empty. Xiao Yikai was standing beside this big chair, with a bitter smile on his face, answering everyone's questions. Chapter 469. Just that after asking and asking, although the atmosphere was not good, but they still could not get an answer, Xiao Yikai insisted that he really did not know where Reverend Daoxian went. In fact, he really did not know. It could only be said that Reverend Daoxian's skills were profound. Maybe the day before yesterday, his spiritual heart was moved, and he went out to travel. The various leaders and Qing Yun sect elders naturally found it hard to believe. Reverend Daoxian had been in charge of Qing Yun sect for many years. There had never been such a thing where he went out to travel without leaving any message. But Xiao Yikai kept giving this answer. They could not do anything about it. They could not just insist that he did not do it in the past. Now he definitely did not do it. This line of questioning continued from morning till noon. Everyone's tongues were dry. Xiao Yikai was even more exhausted, but in the end he still gave the same answer as before. The Qing Yun sect members looked at each other. After a long while, Return of the Wind Valley leaders in Xuchang was the first to stand up. His face full of anger, snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and left. After the leader left, Kevern, Xavion, and the others were called over by the Shu and Sherbua to make up the numbers. Naturally, they also followed and left. Looking at the figures of his fellow disciples leaving, Xiao Yikai slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly his body swayed, and he felt like he was about to collapse. Luckily, his foundation was deep, and he immediately stabilized his body. He bitterly smiled and sighed in his heart. Shirzuen, what happened to you? If you still don't come back, I really can't hold on any longer. Not mentioning Xiao Yikai's bitterness, Xavion followed the crowd out. Big Bamboo Valley disciples were all in mourning period, so none of them followed him out. He silently walked out of Crystal Hall. The scene he saw just now linked it to his teacher and teacher's wife passing away. Xavion's heart was even more bitter. He really did not want to stay here for even a moment longer. Just wanted to quickly leave this place. Just that when he walked out of Crystal Hall, went down the stone steps, he was about to cross the Rainbow Bridge down Tian High and return to the mountain from there. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him, Darren. Xavion turned and looked. It was Small Bamboo Valley Wenmin standing beside, waving to him. Xavion's heart warmed slightly, walked over. Wenmin looked at his haggard appearance. Her heart also ached. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. Seeing that there were people constantly walking past, it was really not a good place to talk, so she signaled Xavion with her eyes and walked forward. Xavion understood, followed her across the Rainbow Bridge, came to the spacious Yunhai platform. Both of them walked to a secluded area and saw that there was no one around. Wenmin then said, Are you all right? Xavion smiled bitterly, hung his head, and said, "You also know about my situation." He heaved a long sigh, lowered his head, and said, "But I still have a few junior brothers under me. If I do not take up this burden, I'm afraid they will feel even worse." Wenmin's eyes were also slightly red, suddenly stretched out her hand and held Xavion's big hand in her palm. Xavion was shocked, looked up at her. Wenmin softly said, "Darren, you are their big senior brother. Now you have taken over the responsibility of Big Bamboo Valley leader. You have to take care of your junior brothers, although it will be tough, but you have to hold on by yourself." Xavion only felt the softness and warmth in his hand, indistinctly a faint fragrance coming from the girl in front of him. That pair of eyes was even more gentle. The pain in his heart lessened a little. He gently held Wenmin's hand tightly, nodded his head, said yes. Wenmin nodded her head, smiled gently at him. Although both of them had not met for long, but right now their feelings seemed to have deepened. Xavion was silent for a moment, said, "I originally wanted to beseech teacher and Shenyang, ask both of them to make the decision to propose to Shuiwe teacher uncle. But the situation now, I really," before he could finish, suddenly a slender white finger pressed on his lips, stopped his words. Xavion looked up at Wenmin. Wenmin gently said, "I understand, with the situation now, naturally it is not the time to think about these things. You can rest assured and return to the mountain. After this period of time, we will discuss again. Anyway, my feelings you also know." Speaking till the end, Wenmin's face turned slightly red. Her voice also became softer. Xavion was touched. An inexplicable hot blood rushed to his head. He could not help but took a step forward and wanted to hug her in his arms. But Wenmin was startled by him, quickly stepped back and dodged, said, "Silly, not afraid of being seen." Xavion then came to his senses, turned and looked around. As expected, although the place where they were standing was secluded, but there were still quite a number of Chinyan disciples above the sea of clouds. Although no one noticed them for the time being, but it was hard to say that they would not occasionally look over. Xavion smiled embarrassedly, said, "It is my fault. I was a little muddle-headed." Wenmin looked at him, suddenly felt sorry for him, rolled her eyes at him, said, "I did not blame you. Why are you like this? Now the situation is not good. In the future, as long as we have the heart, we will eventually be together. Do you understand, fool?" Xavion nodded his head repeatedly, quietly said, "Xiaomin, you are really good to me." Wenmin rolled her eyes at him again, but looking at his expression, she could not help but laugh. Xavion also laughed out. Both of them stood together, for a moment tender and sweet. Although everything outside was like the eve of a storm, but in their hearts, they still had beautiful expectations for the future. After a long while, Wenmin quietly said, "I should go." Although Xavion was reluctant to part, but he knew he could not stay for long, nodded and said, "All right, be careful on your journey." Wenmin glanced at him, gently said, "You must take care of yourself, no matter what. You will be fine in the future." Xavion nodded, said, "I know. You must also cherish yourself." Wenmin gently held his hand, and then let go, turned and walked out of the cloud sea. Xavion watched as she rode her sword and left, slowly waved at her back, until her figure disappeared into the depths of the cloud sea, could not be seen anymore. Blue sky and white clouds, verdant hills and clear waters. Looking at Qingyin mountain range, small bamboo valley, the entire mountain was covered with verdant bamboo forest, the scenery beautiful, almost like a fairyland. Wenmin landed from the horizon, returned to small bamboo valley. A few young female disciples ran over to welcome her. One of them said, "When seen your sister, teacher instructed to let you see her once you return." Wenmin nodded, walked forward, at the same time said, "Where is teacher now?" A disciple beside said, "Teacher is still in her bamboo forest abode. Sweki senior sister seems to be there too." Wenmin was surprised, said, "Why, Sweki is with teacher." That young female disciple said, "Yes, this morning after you left, teacher called Sweki senior sister over." Wenmin nodded, said, "I know, I will go over now. All of you go and do your own things." Everyone acknowledged and walked away with a smile. Wenmin looked at these young and innocent junior sisters. In her heart, she could not help but envy them. Maybe innocence made people happier. She stood there watching their disappearing figures for a long while, then sighed, quickened her steps toward Shui Master's abode in the depths of the bamboo forest. The bamboo path was winding, the verdant bamboos on both sides tall and straight. The air seemed to carry some fragrance. After a few turns, the bamboo forest abode gradually appeared. When Min came to the door, lightly knocked twice on the bamboo door, said, "Teacher, disciple, when Min is here." Shui Master's voice was heard, indifferently said, "Come in." And following Shui Master's voice, the door emitted a deep creak, was opened. Ainan's elegant figure appeared, smiled lightly at Wen Min, said, "Senior sister, you are back." Wen Min smiled at Ainan and walked in. Inside the house, Shui Master sat on the simple bamboo bed. Ainan walked over and stood beside her. Shui Master glanced at Wen Min, said, "Just back." Wen Min respectfully said, "Yes, disciple is just returning from Tongtian Peak." Shui Master was silent for a moment, indifferently said, "What was the situation at Tongtian Peak today, tell me?" Wen Min nodded, said yes. Then she roughly recounted the situation, during which the crowd questioned, and Xiao Yikai's wretched reply did not miss out. Shui Master quietly listened to Wen Min, did not speak a word. Ainan was also expressionless. Just then when she heard Wen Min said that Xiao Yikai was in a difficult situation, she could not help but turn to look at Shui Master, but Shui Master's face was indifferent, as if she did not feel anything. After a while, Wen Min roughly finished the situation, hesitated for a moment, said, "Teacher, there's one more thing. Disciple does not know if she should say." Shui Master closed her eyes, seemed to be thinking about something after listening to what Wen Min said, faintly said, "What is it? Just say it." Wen Min acknowledged, said, "Yes." Then disciple has said it. Today the 6 branches gathered at Tongtian Peak. The other 5 branches leaders all went. Only you did not. Return of the Wind Valley, Zung teacher uncle and a few others. Grumbled to disciple. Also asked disciple to inform teacher. Said everyone is from Qinyan's sect, the same ancestor. Asked teacher to stand up and speak. After speaking, Wen Min carefully looked up at Shui Master, saw her indifferent, neither angry nor agreed, only closed her eyes and pondered. Shui Master did not speak. Wen Min naturally did not dare to say anything. After a moment, Shui Master then slowly spoke to Wen Min. "You just said, other than me, the other 5 branches leaders all went?" Wen Min was stunned for a moment, nodded and said yes. Shui Master glanced at Wen Min, said, "Who went to Big Bamboo Valley?" Wen Min's heart jumped, did not know why teacher suddenly singled out Big Bamboo Valley, hesitated for a moment, said, "It was Tian teacher uncle and Su teacher uncle's eldest disciple Song Darren who passed away." Lu Sweki's face darkened. A hint of bitterness flashed across his eyes. Shui Master's face also dimmed, sighed, said, "Other than him, who else from Big Bamboo Valley went?" Wen Min said, "Big Bamboo Valley senior brothers and junior brothers were all at the funeral, so only Song Darren senior brother went. Even Song Darren senior brother also wore mourning clothes." Shui Master was silent for a moment, faintly said, "It was not easy for them either. Did you go and comfort that Song Darren?" Wen Min was shocked. Shui Master was usually strict with her disciples, even stricter with such matters. Wen Min and Song Darren had been secretly in love for many years. It was already an open secret. Her heart was already in turmoil, afraid that teacher would scold her. Now that Shui Master suddenly mentioned it, she really broke out in cold sweat, hesitated for a long time, then quietly said, "Teacher, I saw that Song's senior brother was really quite pitiful, so my heart softened, and so I went up to speak to him, disciple. Disciple will not dare to disobey teacher's teachings." Shui Master silently looked at Wen Min. Wen Min's heart was beating faster and faster, not knowing if she was going to be punished by teacher, who knew after a moment. Shui Master suddenly heaved a long sigh, said, "Xiao Min, you don't have to be so afraid. Teacher does not mean to blame you." Wen Min almost thought she had heard wrongly, asked in shock, "Teacher, what did you say?" Shui Master indifferently said, "Right now, Big Bamboo Valley is observing mourning. It is impossible in the short term. After a period of time, You can ask that Song Darren to come and propose. Anyway, he is now a branch leader. It will not be a disgrace to you. Chapter 470. When Min's mind buzzed, like she could not accept it. She was so happy she could not speak, but did not understand why her teacher, who had always been adamantly against this matter, suddenly changed her attitude. Shui Wen Master sat on the bamboo bed, looked at the disciple in front of her, her face smiling with happiness mixed with surprise, sighed in her heart, quietly thought. Maybe if she had thought it through earlier, she would also have more happiness. Lu Sweki walked over from the side, hugged Wen Min's shoulders, gently hugged her senior sister. Her eyes were also filled with happiness for her, softly said, "Senior sister, congratulations." In her agitation, Wen Min's eyes reddened, her eyes brimming with tears, quickly used her hands to wipe them away. Shui Wen Master saw it. Not knowing whether to be angry or amused, angrily said, "I only promised you. Why are you so happy?" Wen Min felt embarrassed. Her face blushed, bowed to Shui Wen Master, softly said, "Disciple thanks teacher for your great kindness." Shui Wen Master looked at Wen Min for a long time, shook her head, softly said, "Forget it, get up." Lu Sweki helped Wen Min up from the side. Shui Wen Master's eyes were gentle, looked at Wen Min, and said, "In the future, teacher will not be able to make decisions for you. You have to learn to take care of yourself." Wen Min's heart suddenly turned sour. For a long time, she had long regarded Shui Wen Master as both teacher and mother, could not help but sobbed quietly. Shui Wen Master waved her hand, said, "All right, you must be tired after running back and forth today. Go back and rest." Wen Min sobbed, said, "Yes, disciple will take her leave." After speaking, she slowly retreated. Lu Sweki followed behind her, sent her off for a long distance before returning. In the abode, teacher and disciple faced each other in silence. After a long time, Shui Wen Master suddenly laughed bitterly, said, "Am I wrong in the past, causing her to suffer from this longing, and also harming you?" Lu Sweki walked over and gently knelt down in front of Shui Wen Master, quietly said, "Teacher, we are all brought up by you, taught by you. Only we are in the wrong. We will never have the slightest resentment towards teacher." Shui Wen Master stretched out her hand, gently caressed Lu Sweki's black soft hair side, said, "You can get up." Lu Sweki answered and stood up. Shui Wen Master closed her eyes to rest and did not speak again. Lu Sweki was silent for a while, suddenly said, "Teacher, I have something to say." Master Shui Wen opened her eyes and looked at her, her expression calm, faintly said, "You want to talk about Tong Tian Peak?" Lu Sweki nodded. "Yes. Now that Big Bamboo Valley's Tian teacher uncle and Su teacher uncle have passed away, and Daoxian teacher uncle he, I'm afraid it's really hard to turn back. Why don't we tell the truth to the rest of the sect, even if it's for Qingyin's sect's face? But at least we should know that the other 6 branch leaders and Tong Tian Peaks, Xiao Yikai, Xiao's senior brother, is the one." Shui Wen Master was silent for a moment, said, "You are right. I have also thought about these." Lu Sweki was startled. "Master, then why did you?" Shui Wen Master gave a bitter laugh, said, "You were saying since I thought of it, why didn't I tell them? Silly child, have you ever thought about how many people will believe us after we tell them about this?" Lu Sweki was stunned, speechless, unable to speak for a moment. Shui Wen Master sighed, said, "You also said just now, Qingyin's sect has thousands of people. Only your Tian teacher uncle, Su teacher uncle, and me, and you know this secret. Now that both of them have passed away, only the 2 of us know. But even if we say it out, do you think Qingyin's sect will believe this? Will anyone believe that our sect treasure, Zhu Xian ancient sword, actually contains evil, spirit, vicious energy? Will they believe that sect head reverend whose skills are profound, who saved the common people several times, actually became a ruthless, murderous demon?" Lu Sweki was stunned, speechless. Shui Wen Master quietly said, "This secret should only be passed down by the successive generations of sect head. If we say it out, no one in Qingyin's sect will believe it. Moreover, we also don't have any evidence, so what should we say?" Lu Sweki clenched her teeth. After a long while said, "But with the current situation, Daoxian teacher Uncle's matter will not be covered up sooner or later. Even if we don't say it, I'm afraid that one day he will suddenly run out by himself. What should we do? Shuewa Master heaved a long sigh, closed her eyes, and said, "What to do? I also don't know what to do." Lu Sweki was speechless. The house sank into silence. Outside the house, the emerald green bamboo forest gently swayed with the wind, making waves of pleasing bamboo sounds. The scenery pleasing to the eye, and in the bamboo forest it seemed more and more oppressive. Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King Sect. In the following days, Ghostly tried to use the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate to save Bai Yao. But for some reason, other than the first time when the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate unexpectedly changed the Hehuan bell, after every attempt, the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate was still the same Qian Kuan reincarnation plate, but the Hehuan bell did not react. Each time Ghostly placed the Hehuan bell above the plate, there was no scene of the bell ringing and glowing. Each time it was like a small stone falling straight into the plate. Ghostly, although did not give up, still held on to the last bit of hope and tried again, but what awaited him was only numerous failures. Ghost King in the initial days also often waited in the cold stone chamber, but after witnessing many failures, he seemed to have given up earlier than Ghostly. The number of times he came became lesser and lesser. In the recent few days, he had not come at all. Maybe to Ghost King, to see Ghostly fail again and again, to him, was instead an even more painful thing. Huh. There was a soft, crisp sound with a slight echo. The Hehuan bell once again fell from the air and landed in the center of the cosmos reincarnation disk. It gently rotated a few times and then stopped moving. Ghostly's face was expressionless. Even the disappointment seemed numb. He did not continue to try, quietly sat for a while, and then kept the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate, carefully placed the Hehuan bell back into Bai Yao's hand. He stared deeply at Bai Yao's tranquil face. 10 years, she was still so beautiful. Just like when they first met, even a faint smile at the corner of her lips could evoke innumerable deeply engraved memories in his mind. Only the coldness of her skin coldly reminded Ghostly that reality was different from the past. Ghostly quietly stood up, looked deeply at Bai Yao. His lips moved, but in the end he did not say anything, then slowly turned and left the cold stone chamber. Outside the cold stone chamber, the tunnel was still empty. Ghostly slowly walked along the tunnel. The cracks on both sides of the tunnel seemed to be more and deeper, just that in Ghostly's eyes, there was no reaction. He only quietly walked. Behind Ghostly, deep in the other direction of the tunnel, in a shadowy corner, Ghost King stood silently, watching that young man walking further and further away. Ghost King did not go up to ask Ghostly about the situation in the cold stone chamber. After so many years, he could already know Bai Yao's situation from Ghostly's casual movement and expression. Could it be that there was no hope in the end? A trace of sadness flashed past Ghost King's face. He turned and walked into the darkness. When he appeared again, he was already in the blood pool deep in the cave. Slowly walked to the blood pool platform. As he thought, Mr. Ghost figure was still standing there alone, pondering hard, and the hidden dragon cauldron was also floating in the air, but under the illumination of the red light. Indistinctly, the mysterious white light above the ancient cauldron seemed to be much brighter than before, and that evil face on the cauldron, the blood energy, seemed to recede a few notches, looked even more twisted and savage. An inexplicable rage suddenly rose in Ghost King's heart. His hands involuntarily clenched tightly. His most beloved daughter did not improve. Now even the four divinities' blood formation, which he had painstakingly built, also stopped because of some ancient divine prohibition. Mr. Ghost seemed to sense something. His body moved, slowly turned over through the black veil on his face, indifferently said, "You are here." Ghost King breathed deeply a few times, then suppressed the rage and murderous intent in his heart. His expression returned to normal, walked over, said, "How is it? Have you thought of any solution?" Mr. Ghost silently shook his head. Although he had expected this answer, but anger still rose in Ghost King's heart. Recently, he seemed to be especially prone to anger and murderous intent, if not for Mr. Ghost being an indispensable figure in activating this four divinities blood formation. Ghost King most likely would really attack him. Ghost King's expression naturally did not escape Mr. Ghost's eyes, but Mr. Ghost did not seem to mind at all, only indifferently said, "Give me a few more days. You have already waited for so long. What's the harm in waiting a little longer?" Ghost King's body shook, as if startled. After a long while, he seemed to regain his composure, slowly nodded and said, "You are right." After speaking, he hesitated for a moment, seemed to feel that his expression was too much, forced a smile, and said, "These few days, Ghostly and I have been treating Bayao, but she is still the same. Her state of mind is too poor. Don't mind it." Mr. Ghost shook his head, said, "Father and daughter love is deep, I understand." He paused, slowly turned around. His eyes again looked at the hidden dragon cauldron floating in the air, especially that mysterious light pillar. At the same time, he casually said, "Miss Bayao is still not improving. These few years, she has really tried all kinds of methods." Ghost King sighed, said, "It is like this, although Ghostly that fellow and I do not get along very well, but his feelings for Bayao, there is nothing much to say. Recently, he found a strange magical treasure from somewhere to save Biao. The first time, it seemed to have some effect and could resonate with the joyous union bell. Unexpectedly, at the crucial moment, the divine power of the underground blood formation was suddenly activated. As a result, it became useless." Ghost King spoke casually. In a daze, he again thought of his daughter lying on the cold stone platform, his heart aching dully. As such, he did not notice Mr. Ghost beside him. His body suddenly shook, as if he was frozen. After a moment, Mr. Ghost's voice was still as calm as before, quietly said, "Oh, that treasure that Ghostly brought, what does it look like?" Ghost King's heart was still somewhat gloomy. Casually said, "It looks like a jade plate. It looks rather warm. On it there are a few strange pictures. The strangest thing is there are many small jade pieces in the middle of the jade plate. Not to mention the strange words, they actually slide on their own and never collide with each other." Ghost King suddenly frowned, looked at Mr. Ghost, and said, "Why are you suddenly interested in this matter?" Mr. Ghost's back was facing him, still looking up at the hidden dragon cauldron floating in the air. After a long silence, he quietly said, "Nothing. I am just casually asking." Chapter 471. Ghostly had returned to majestic Fox Mountain for a full 10 days, but his biggest and only goal still did not have any progress. In these 10 days, the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate and the Hehuan bell in Bai Yao's hand did not have any reaction. Each time he tried with hope, but always got a cold reply. As for the mysterious underground power that day, it seemed to have disappeared after that and never acted up again. Correspondingly, in the Ghost King's sect headquarters, the gloomy atmosphere suddenly changed. These 10 days, there was no one who went crazy and hurt anyone, and the frightening speed of the cracks on the walls also suddenly stopped. Everything seemed to have returned to the peaceful days of the past. Everyone gradually recovered from the brink of collapse, and smiles slowly appeared on everyone's faces. Even though the smiles were still filled with trepidation and cautiousness, the atmosphere was completely different from before. In the caves, in the tunnels, the number of Ghost King's sect disciples gradually increased. The comradeship also completely changed, gradually chatting and laughing. And regardless if it was a coincidence or not, these changes happened after Ghostly returned to majestic Fox Mountain. Therefore, among the Ghost King's sect disciples, a rumor unknowingly spread. It was said that after the vice head returned, although he did not seem to care about the disciples, but in fact he swiftly found the source of the changes and destroyed it, and then returned the piece to the Ghost King's sect headquarters. This rumor was obviously absurd and untrue, but maybe because the past few days were too depressing and fearful, many of the Ghost King's sect disciples actually believed it. This rumor also swiftly spread. As for how Ghostly found the source of the changes and how he destroyed it, most of them did not elaborate. Even what was the source of the changes, no one seemed to be clear. However, everyone seemed to have completely ignored these problems and were just discussing in private. Ghostly naturally did not know about these strange rumors. Even if he knew, most likely he would not care about it. What he cared about was only Bai Yao in the cold stone chamber, and this person who was most important to him. Until now, there was still no improvement to himself. That little bit of confidence that he had on the first day finally came to an end today, wiped out. Pa! With another soft sound, the Hehuan bell once again fell into the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate. It rolled slightly and then quietly stopped moving. Ghostly stared in a daze at the jade plate and the bell in it. In his originally dim eyes, the last glimmer of light also disappeared. He stood there silently for a long time, then picked up the Hehuan bell, walked to the stone platform, and put it back in Bailu's hand. He carefully put Bailu's hands together in front of her chest. His action was gentle, as if he was afraid he would hurt her. After which, he stared at Bai Yao's face, quietly said, Bai Yao, sorry I was unable to save you again. This Qian Kuan reincarnation plate is Tian Yin Temple's treasure. I have borrowed it for more than 10 days. I really cannot be thick-skinned and not return it. At this point, the muscles on his face trembled, and he closed his eyes. He seemed to be very excited. After a long while, he slowly calmed down and said softly, Don't worry, as long as I'm alive, no matter what, even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, I will definitely save you. Just bear with it for a period of time, all right? Bai Yao quietly laid in front of him. Her face still had a peaceful expression, a faint smile on her lips, although there was no reaction. Maybe she was also agreeing to him. Ghost Li's eyes suddenly became moist. He abruptly turned around and took a deep breath. After the little bit of moisture dissipated, he then slowly walked out. The heavy stone door slowly closed behind him. Ghost Li's mood also slowly fell to the bottom. After standing there for a long time, he silently shook his head, as if trying to shake something out of his mind, turned around, and was about to leave, but suddenly he was startled and stopped. Outside the cold stone chamber, ahead of the tunnel, Mr. Ghost in black quietly stood there, like a Yin spirit without any vitality. Watching Ghostly, his eyes behind the black veil, after a deep look at Ghostly, his eyes landed on the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate in Ghost Li's hands and never left again. Ghostly then realized his state of mind was too low. He actually forgot to keep the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate. Immediately took out the black cloth, gently wrapped the plate, and kept it. Mr. Ghost looked at his actions, did not have any intention to stop him, but his eyes flashed, not knowing what he was thinking. Although Ghostly was puzzled by Mr. Ghost standing there without saying a word, but firstly, Mr. Ghost's usual behavior was strange and mysterious. Secondly, right now, he really did not have the mood to ask about other trifling matters, and was even more disinclined to think why Mr. Ghost was standing there. After keeping the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate, he did not even bother to greet Mr. Ghost, strided over. When he walked past Mr. Ghost, he did not even turn his head, just walked forward. Just that although he did not want to bother, Mr. Ghost did not seem to have such thoughts. After walking for about 10 steps, Mr. Ghost's voice was heard from behind, cold and low but very clear, said, Please wait. Ghostly frowned, turned around, glanced at Mr. Ghost, said, What is it? Mr. Ghost's eyes glimmered, slowly said, Is Bai Yao Miss Stillwell? A trace of anger suddenly flashed past Ghost Li's face. No one in Ghost King's sect did not know about Bai Yao's condition. This Mr. Ghost's words, wasn't he asking the obvious? If it was someone else, it would still be fine, but Ghostly had always avoided Bai Yao's matters the most. Almost no one in Ghost King's sect dared to speak like that in front of him. After so many years, Mr. Ghost was the first. Ghost Li's face turned cold, his eyes sharp, stared at Mr. Ghost, coldly said, What are you trying to say? Mr. Ghost seemed oblivious to the murderous aura emanating from Ghostly, but he did not directly answer Ghostly. Instead asked, I heard you found a new magical weapon to save Bai Yao Miss. Is that true? Ghostly coldly said, That's right, but why are you asking this? Speaking, he took a step forward towards Mr. Ghost. His eyes even sharper, an invisible murderous aura was already stirring. Mr. Ghost still turned a blind eye to the incoming danger, and also seemed to not notice that Ghostly was already enraged. His mental state seemed to be completely cold, indifferently said, Can you lend me that treasure to take a look? The anger on Ghost Li's face intensified, his clothes fluttered without wind. Clearly he was really enraged. raised his leg and took a second step forward. And this step looked not big, but in a flash, he was already 3 chi away from Mr. Ghost. With a raise of his hand, he could enshroud Mr. Ghost under his own true killer move. Just that this murderous atmosphere looked like a big battle was about to break out, but at that critical moment, suddenly, because of Mr. Ghost's words, it calmed down. Maybe I have some way to deal with this magical weapon. The Cold Stone Room was specially built by Ghost King for Bai Yao, since it was where Bai Yao was, in addition to her own special circumstances. Naturally, it was an extremely secluded place in the Ghost King's sect headquarters, and Ghost King had long given strict orders. Ordinary Ghost King sect disciples were definitely not allowed to go near this place. In Ghost King's sect, the number of people who could freely go near the Cold Stone Room was not more than 5. Ghost Lee and the mysterious Mr. Ghost were the candidates. Right now, the tunnel outside the Cold Stone Room was empty, only the 2 of them looking at each other. Ghost Lee's eyes were still staring sharply at Mr. Ghost, but the anger and murderous aura that burst out from him had already calmed down. After a moment, he suddenly said, "You recognize this item?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "Just took a hurried glance, didn't even see the magical weapon clearly. I can't say." Ghostly pondered for a moment, took out the black cloth-wrapped Qian Kun reincarnation plate, untied the black cloth, and was about to hand it to Mr. Ghost, but suddenly hesitated, kept the plate in his hand, and did not stretch it out. Mr. Ghost's eyes lingered on the warm jade plate for a moment, slowly looked up at Ghostly, did not speak, nor did he urge. Ghostly frowned tightly, felt some hesitation in his heart. This mysterious Mr. Ghost in front of him. Although right now, they were both from Ghost King's sect, but clearly Ghostly did not trust him at all, and during the Beast Deity battle at Qinyan Hill Tongtian Peak Rear Mountain, Mr. Ghost suddenly attacked Ghostly when he was fighting with that mysterious old man in Founder's ancestral hall. It made Ghostly extremely dissatisfied and disgusted. Just that disgust was disgust. This mysterious person in front of him, regardless of skills or knowledge, Ghostly had never dared to belittle him. After a few rounds of hesitation, finally that most precious hope in his heart suppressed everything else. Ghostly slowly handed over the jade plate. Mr. Ghost did not speak, carefully took the jade plate with both hands, held it in front of him, through the black veil on his face, carefully observed. The warm jade plate emitted a gentle white glow, like invisible light ripples, slowly flowing in the air, those engravings on the edge of the plate, some ancient and majestic, some vivid and ingenious, some like the stars in the firmament, some like high mountains and flowing rivers. It made one exclaim in admiration. But the most attention-grabbing place was clearly that square area in the middle of the jade plate. Innumerable small jade pieces quietly slid, never-ending, but each had their own unique and mysterious tracks, without any collision, dazzling one, indistinctly feeling that in the movement of these innumerable jade pieces, there must be some kind of heaven and earth truth. Other than that, this mysterious magical weapon that originally belonged to Tian'in Temple, right now, compared to when Ghostly brought it out from Tian'in Temple, had a slight change. That was on those small jade pieces that kept moving. Each side had a strange character. When Ghostly took the jade plate, these characters were all dim, and right now the Qian Kun reincarnation plate in Mr. Ghost's hands, as those jade pieces slid. From time to time, some of the mysterious characters on the jade pieces would suddenly light up and then gradually dim down. These characters flashed. There seemed to be no order to speak of, just that after one side lit up, another side lit up. Compared to before, it was more lively and also more mysterious. Naturally, Ghostly had discovered this change long ago. In fact, this change happened after he used the Qian Kun Samsara plate for the first time and triggered the strange underground force. Ghostly even held some hope for this change, but for the next 10 days, no matter how hard he tried, he was still unable to understand this mysterious magical weapon. Mr. Ghost's face hidden behind the black veil. Nobody could see his expression clearly. Also unable to guess what he was thinking, just that the brilliance in his eyes was indeed getting brighter and brighter. Ghostly suddenly felt nervous. After an unknown period of time, Mr. Ghost turned this Qian Kun reincarnation plate over and over again countless times. Then his eyes left the plate, looked up at Ghostly. Ghostly suppressed his voice, as if to suppress his emotions, quietly said, "How is it?" Mr. Ghost closed his eyes and was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "This magical weapon is an ancient magical weapon called Star Plate." Chapter 472. Ghostly was surprised, said, "Astrolabe?" Mr. Ghost nodded his head affirmatively. Ghostly did not expect that Mr. Ghost would first say such a sentence. For a moment he was stunned. That day in Tian'in Temple, Puong Master and Pewed Master spoke with certainty, said this magical weapon was called Qian Kun Reincarnation Plate. Why did it become Astrolabe to Mr. Ghost? But Ghostly had already thrown this question to the back of his mind. To him, whether this plate was Qian Kun Reincarnation Plate or Astrolabe did not have any meaning. The most important thing was whether Mr. Ghost knew the secret of this magical weapon and used it to save Bai Yao. And looking at Mr. Ghost's confident look towards this magical weapon, Ghostly could not help but become agitated, urgently said, Then do you know if it can save Bai Yao?" Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, although it was only a short period of time, but to Ghostly, it was like thousands of years in torment. His heart was in his throat, afraid that Mr. Ghost would spit out a "cannot." Fortunately, Mr. Ghost, although hesitated but did not directly say no, he was heard saying, "This item is an ancient magical weapon, very old, and has never appeared in the world. Although I know a little about it, but I am not completely sure. I still have to try." Ghostly's heart then relaxed, but couldn't help but felt dispirited. Just that no matter what, at least there was a little more hope, and right now it seemed that this hope was not very big, but he was still overjoyed. He had really been immersed in despair for too long. A little bit of hope could make him infatuated. Mr. Ghost pondered for a moment, said to Ghostly, "This is not a suitable place. Why don't we enter the cold stone room first?" Ghostly nodded, was about to walk over, but hesitated again, and then for the first time, stretched his hand to Mr. Ghost's side, made a make-way-for gesture, said, "Mr. Please go first." Ghostly had always been condescending in Ghost King's sect. Even to Ghost King, he was rarely courteous. This time he actually had such an attitude towards this Mr. Ghost whom he did not have a good impression of. It could be seen how important Bai Yao was in his heart. Mr. Ghost seemed surprised for a moment, but then glanced at him, nodded, and walked over. Ghostly followed behind him. Both of them again entered the cold stone chamber. In the stone room, Bailu was still lying on the stone platform like before, quiet and beautiful. Pale white cold air floated up from the icy stone platform, lingering in the air. Ghostly walked to Bai Yao, was about to take the Hehuan bell from her hand when suddenly Mr. Ghost said, "Wait a moment to take that Hehuan bell." Ghostly was surprised, turned and looked at Mr. Ghost, said, "Bai Yao's soul is locked in Hehuan bell. If we don't take it, how can we save her?" Mr. Ghost shook his head, said, "I've said it just now. The astrolabe is an ancient weapon. I only know a little about it. Don't dare to say I have full confidence before we try. It is better not to alert Bai Yao on Miss Hehuan bell. It is not too late to use the spell after we have grasped it. At least we have to protect the safety of Bai Yao Miss soul." Ghostly was enlightened, nodded his head, and said, "Mr. is right." Mr. Ghost with the jade plate sat cross-legged on the other side of the stone room. Ghostly also sat opposite Mr. Ghost, stared intently at him. Although Mr. Ghost's sudden appearance gave him a glimmer of hope, but Ghostly still did not completely trust him. Although he spoke courteously, but in his heart he still had to be on guard. Mr. Ghost slowly placed the jade plate on the ground before him, closed his eyes and pondered, seemed to have some doubts lingering in his heart. After a long while, he opened his eyes and then slowly stretched out his right index finger, unhurriedly stretched towards the jade plate. Ghostly's countenance changed, and then controlled himself. Nervousness revealed in his eyes. Looked at Mr. Ghost, although he could not see his expression, but his eyes were staring unblinkingly at the jade plate. Clearly he was not at ease. Mr. Ghost's index finger very quickly neared the jade plate. 5 inches away from the plate, he stopped. Below his finger, there was still no change on the plate. In the gentle white light, numerous small jade pieces were still automatically moving according to their own orbit, some of the undulating words, also quietly glowing. Mr. Ghost's hand stopped in the air. His eyes were staring at the plate, as if searching for something, although Ghostly was puzzled, but right now he did not dare to disturb him. Mr. Ghost waited like that for almost half a cup of tea time. Suddenly, with a light shout, That finger which had been above the jade plate, like a lightning flashed across the horizon, pierced the firmament, pressed down on the jade plate. A soft, muffled sound. A piece of jade slid to the middle of the plate, and the words on it had just lit up. Just when it was about to dim down, Mr. Ghost's finger just happened to press on that piece of jade. The calm plate suddenly emitted 100 times more resplendent light than before. Almost at the same time, Ghostly, who was sitting at the side, had an illusion, as if the world around him had suddenly slowed down in that instant, and the stone room he was in seemed to have become 100 times, 1,000 times more spacious than what he remembered. He was like an ant facing an endless, unknown world. This strange illusion passed in a blink, but Ghostly's hands were already full of cold sweat, but right now, he did not have the time to think too much. Once he regained his senses, the first reaction was to look at the jade plate. The jade plate in front of him emitted more and more dazzling light. Deep in the light, sounds were heard. Most likely it was because Mr. Ghost's fingers had destroyed the tracks of the pieces of jade in the plate. More and more pieces of jade collided together. As the sounds gradually grew louder, the rays of light from the jade plate also became more and more glaring. In a blink, it had filled the entire cold stone room. Ghostly could not even see Mr. Ghost's figure. In front of this sudden mysterious light, he was surprised and delighted. The dazzling light was still growing stronger, like a small sun shining into the stone room, but Ghostly did not feel the slightest heat. Instead, in the thousands of rays of light, there was a low, subtle sound like incantation, like low chanting, like deep mountain wind howling, like birds chirping in secluded valley. Suddenly, at this tense and strange moment, Ghostly felt his heart thumping heavily. His body shook, as if the blood flow in his body had stagnated for a moment. He felt a wave of dizziness and almost fainted. Ghostly was shocked before he could react. In that dazzling light and mysterious incantation, both of his palms, soles of his feet, dantian in his abdomen, and biwi on top of his head, these were the most sensitive places in his body where the energy channels converged, vibrated together. At the same time his body's blood surged. Blood flowed backward. The pain was unbearable with his perseverance. He could not help but groan, filled with pain. Behind the light, Mr. Ghost seemed to sense something, asked, "What is it?" His voice was calm and did not seem to be affected at all. Ghostly was bewildered. He had never encountered such a situation before. If it was the sinister orb's demonic powers backlash, it was obviously different from the past. And ever since he had learnt the 4th volume of Tian Shu, the sinister orb's demonic power had already completely integrated and had never acted up again. Moreover, right now, the soul-absorbing orb where the sinister orb was quietly lying in his arms, not moving. Just that while this thought flashed past his mind, the pain in his body only increased. The next moment, the blood vessels in his body vibrated even more violently, almost convulsing, and his limbs gradually turned numb. The vibrations that were distributed in his body, like his palms, dantian, etc., suddenly moved swiftly from all directions towards the middle of his forehead between his brows. This strange change was so fast, it was unimaginable. Ghostly's body trembled violently. Fortunately, right now, the dazzling light was blocking. Mr. Ghost did not know what was happening, but with Mr. Ghost's skills, he could already sense that something was happening to Ghostly. In that indistinct, flickering light, Mr. Ghost's black figure seemed to suddenly stand up. Ghostly felt his entire body was in unbearable pain, like being cut by knives, but he did not know what was happening. And in this moment of pain, the tremors that gathered from all parts of his body had all gathered at his forehead. In that instant, Ghostly seemed to hear a faint cracking sound from the bones above his head. Like an explosion, his forehead exploded. And a glaring light, like a sharp dagger, stabbed into his forehead, penetrated through his skull. At that moment, Ghostly felt the world spinning, almost lost his consciousness, but his character had always been strong and persevering. These many years he had developed an indomitable tenacity. He managed to persevere, and in between the pain, he realized that his head was safe and sound. There was no explosion like he had imagined, but that illusion just now was so real, it made one fearful and terrifying. At this moment, Mr. Ghost's voice was heard. "What happened to you?" And following Mr. Ghost's words, Ghostly suddenly felt his body relaxed. That strange pressure like tide receded. The brilliant light in the cold stone chamber also swiftly dimmed. He took a deep breath, composed himself, looked ahead. Mr. Ghost had stood up and was looking at Ghostly, and his fingers naturally left the jade plate. Without Mr. Ghost's fingers, the pieces of jade in the middle of the plate again resumed their original tracks, and the plate also resumed its original state. Ghostly, under Mr. Ghost's gaze, was silent for a moment, and then his face slowly calmed down, faintly said, "Nothing. The light was too glaring. I stretched my hand out to block it." Mr. Ghost was surprised, frowned. Ghostly's skills were definitely not below his. He naturally would not believe Ghostly would be afraid of the glaring white light, but looking at Ghostly's expression, it was clear that he did not intend to tell him. Mr. Ghost hesitated for a moment, and then sat back down. Ghostly glanced at him, said, "How is it your understanding of this Chien Kun, this astrolabe? Can you cast it?" Mr. Ghost nodded, but his expression seemed strange. Was about to speak. Suddenly at this moment, both Ghostly and Mr. Ghost's countenances changed at the same time, felt something. The next moment, the entire icy cold stone room shook violently. Following that, a strange and thick stench of blood instantly gushed out, pervading everywhere. On the surrounding solid stone walls, sounds of pa-pa-pa-pa, shocking crisp sounds continuously sounded out. The original cracks once again expanded. Countless large and small stones from the stone walls fell down. The ground shook more and more violently. Perhaps it was because of the increasing cracks on the walls. The soundproofing of the cold stone chamber was not as good as before. Indistinctly, someone's desperate and crazy cries could be heard. In the nauseating stench of blood, Mr. Ghost and Ghostly's countenances changed again. That mysterious, strange power which had been quiet for 10 days, at this moment, was awakened again. The surrounding stone walls and ground shook more and more violently. This time, the strange power seemed to be especially ferocious, showing no signs of stopping. Ghostly, with an arrow shot to the side of the cold stone platform, guarding Bai Yao's body, and Mr. Ghost looked around, his brows tightly frowned, did not speak, seemed to be deep in thought, his face also indistinctly bewildered. Chapter 473. Roars and screams could be heard from afar. It seemed that the people outside had once again fallen into the fear and madness from before. The cracks on the walls were still slowly expanding, and the rocks that kept falling caused the ground to tremble. It was a particularly frightening scene. Rumble. Suddenly a loud sound was heard. It was from the entrance of the stone chamber. A huge rock shattered into pieces and scattered on the ground. In the midst of the rock fragments swirling, a figure swiftly swept in, his face full of anxiety. It was Ghost King. Once Ghost King entered the stone chamber, he looked at the platform. Ghostly was already guarding beside Bai Yao. Although the quakes were strong and rocks kept falling from the top of the chamber, but with Ghostly's movements, all the rocks that landed within the range of the platform were sent flying by him. Ghost King heaved a sigh of relief, calmed down slightly, but his face did not relax. His eyes turned and saw Mr. Ghost was also at the other side of the stone chamber, frowned and said to Mr. Ghost, "What are you doing here? Still not going?" Speaking halfway, Ghost King suddenly stopped. Mr. Ghost seemed to understand, nodded his head, his body moved, looked like he was about to leave, but suddenly thought of something. His eyes turned to the ground. That jade plate, unknown if it should be called. Astrolabe or Chien Kun reincarnation plate, quietly lying on the ground. Mr. Ghost took a step towards the plate, suddenly felt a sharp gaze behind him, extremely cold. He slowly turned back. It was Ghostly who had casually struck a falling stone. His eyes were staring at him. Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, did not move forward, and then swept out of the stone chamber. His black figure like an apparition flashed a few times and then disappeared. Right now, only Ghostly and Ghost King were left in the stone chamber. Ghost King glanced at the jade plate on the ground, looked at Ghostly, was silent for a moment, wanted to speak but stopped, instead sighed softly. Regardless of why Mr. Ghost was here, Ghostly brought the jade plate to this cold stone chamber. Naturally, it was to save Bai Yao, and right now, without asking, he knew that Bai Yao did not seem to be getting better. Ghost King quietly walked to the other side of the platform, Coincidentally, a piece of rock above him could not hold on any longer and fell down. Ghost King lightly waved his hand. That piece of rock, as if it received a heavy blow, flew out diagonally in the air. A deafening sound rushed to the stone wall beside, smashed into pieces. Ghostly glanced at Ghost King, did not speak. The two men stood quietly beside the sleeping girl, patiently and thoroughly guarding her. Bai Yao still had a faint smile on her face. Maybe in her heart there was some happiness. Another half a cup of tea's time had passed, but this strange earthquake still showed no signs of stopping. On the contrary, that mysterious force carrying a thick stench of blood rampaged underground. Both Ghost King and Ghostly were highly skilled. They could clearly feel that this force was not an ordinary earthquake, but had spirituality. It felt like a trapped giant beast, roaring furiously, trying to struggle free of its shackles and chains. For that, even if it destroyed the heaven and earth, it did not care. Outside the stone chamber, because the stone door was destroyed by Ghost King, the frenzied roars and screams of the Ghost King's sect disciples were heard, becoming louder and more ear-piercing. Ghost King's expression gradually turned agitated. Anger also gradually surfaced on his face. Ghostly, who was standing beside, felt Ghost King's state of mind had changed. Glanced at him, his heart was shocked. Ghost King's facial muscles contorted slightly, looking ferocious, totally different from his usual demeanor. And in his eyes, a layer of dark red color suddenly surfaced, as if a faint red glow was flowing in his eyes. Ghostly was surprised. Ghost King also looked over. Their eyes met. Ghost King suddenly sneered, his voice cold, indifferently said, "What are you looking at?" Ghostly met his gaze, did not have any intention of retreating, also indifferently said, "Nothing." Ghost King's eyes froze. Coldness shot out from his eyes, stared at Ghostly. The originally relaxed atmosphere suddenly for some reason became tense again, but at this moment, after a strong tremor, both of them felt the mysterious power under their feet suddenly receding. As expected, after a moment, the ground and the surrounding walls swiftly stopped shaking. The stones falling like rain also finally stopped. That strange stench of blood in the air also quietly dissipated. Ghostly gently heaved a sigh of relief, looked towards the cold stone platform. Bai Yao was lying there safe and sound, quietly smiling and sleeping. Then, Ghostly turned to look at Ghost King. Ghost King was also quietly watching Bai Yao. The anger and indistinct murderous look on his face quietly disappeared in this world. Maybe only when he was looking at his only beloved daughter could Ghost King wake up from his anger, calm down. Ghost King looked at Bai Yao for a long while, his eyes filled with affection, then slowly moved his eyes away, quietly said, "Take good care of her." Ghostly nodded, said, "I will." Ghost King turned and strode out. Soon his figure disappeared. Ghostly stood for a while. The corner of his eyes glanced at the ground. That jade plate was still lying on the ground. Stones were falling, but strangely, not a single stone hit the jade plate. Ghostly walked over, picked up the jade plate from the ground, carefully studied it for a while, took out the black cloth from his bosom, and put it back. Outside the stone room, the roars gradually quieted down, but after the calamity, the noises were still rising and falling. Evidently, there were still many who had not awoken from the fear. Ghostly frowned. His eyes slowly looked at the surrounding ruins. After this round of violent destruction, the stone room that was already cracked was even more scarred. What was different from the previous time was that not only were the stone walls in the room severely damaged, but this time around, even the ground where one stepped on had started to have rather large cracks. Some places had even been torn into quite a deep pit. The cold stone room was already in such a state, the tunnel outside, and where the Ghost King's sect disciples were at, one could imagine the devastation. The moaning sound from afar seemed to be the best footnote to this. Ghostly's eyes gradually turned sharp, walked to a crack in the wall, quietly but carefully looked, and then, with his brows tightly frowned, stretched out one hand and felt up and down the crack. Small stones following the movement of his hand fell down, bounced a few times on the ground, and rolled to the corner. Ghostly slowly retracted his arm. Then, he made a strange action. He placed his palm in front of his nose and sniffed it lightly. as if he was smelling something strange. His eyes became even sharper and brighter. This strange force had appeared twice after he returned to majestic Fox Mountain. Coincidentally, when he was using the Qian Kuan reincarnation plate to save Bai Yao, to say it had nothing to do with it was really unjustifiable, since it was related to his most important matter of saving Bai Yao. Then he could no longer stay out of it. Deep inside the cave, the blood pool. The raging four divinities' blood formation had already calmed down, although the air above the blood pool was still filled with a thick stench of blood, but the light rings emitted from the hidden dragon cauldron were no longer fluctuating. Mr. Ghost stood alone on the platform, looked up at the hidden dragon cauldron floating in the air, in the red light flickering in the sky. His eyes instead stared intently at that white light pillar on the evil demon face on the ancient cauldron. The white pillar of light that was shaped like a sharp light dagger was much brighter than the one he had seen before, and its diameter seemed to be thicker as well. With this, that evil face became even more distorted, not to mention the red light, which was almost completely red, was forced to the lower half. Right now, looking at it, even that little bit of red had dimmed, a feeling that it could not be maintained. Just that Mr. Ghost looked at this unfavorable situation. His eyes did not have the anxiousness and urgency before, instead more of a kind of joy. After a long time, he suddenly laughed quietly. Quietly said, as expected it is related to that astrolabe. His figure moved, walked forward, stopped when he reached the end of the platform, and then stretched out his body to look at the blood pool below. Saw four huge spiritual beasts soaked in the blood, all looking weak and exhausted. Clearly, these ancient spiritual beasts' vital energies were completely absorbed by this four divinities' blood formation, set up by Mr. Ghost. And around the hidden dragon cauldron, the energies were unusually abundant, turned into red lights, circling the cauldron incessantly. The hidden dragon cauldron was also flickering with light, as if responding to these energies. Just that at the most crucial throat area, the light dagger on that evil face blocked the energy channel, causing the surrounding energies to be unable to enter the cauldron, making it difficult for the blood formation to be completed. Mr. Ghost looked at this scene, his eyes behind the black veil slightly narrowed. His eyes revealed a contemplative look, his palms clasped together, subconsciously tapping lightly. Clearly, he was thinking about something. And at this moment, a sound of clothes flapping was heard from behind the platform. Mr. Ghost immediately sensed it, turned around. Ghost King's face was dark, walking over. Ghost King could not be bothered to be courteous, directly asked Mr. Ghost, "What is going on? Why did the blood formation's spiritual energy go out of control so badly?" Mr. Ghost slowly glanced at that light dagger on the cauldron, indifferently said, "This unusual earthquake is because of the Azura divine power contained in the four divinities' blood formation. It has its own spiritual energy to struggle free from the divine spell Qian Kuan Lock, struggling with all its might. In the meantime, it also triggered the ferocious blood energy here, as well as the spiritual energy of the giant beasts absorbed by the blood formation, the three powers acting up. That is why there is such earth-shaking and mountain-shaking power." Ghost King coldly snorted, also glanced up, said, "Sounds nice. Why is it that the earth-shaking and mountain-shaking still can't do anything to a small light pillar?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "If the ancient divine prohibition is so easy to remove, it would not be an ancient divine method." Anger flashed past Ghost King's face, coldly said, "I don't want to hear so much. Do you have any way to remove this bullshit Qian Kuan lock?" Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, suddenly laughed quietly and said, "It was originally very tricky, but now," he slowly looked up at Ghost King, said, "There is a way." Ghost King was shocked, asked in astonishment, "What, you found a way?" Mr. Ghost slowly nodded, but did not directly say what the way was, instead turned around, looked at that unsophisticated hidden dragon cauldron floating above his head. After staring for a long while, softly said, "Bear with it a while more. The time for you to be born will not be too far." In the air, the red light on the hidden dragon cauldron flickered incessantly, as if it had spirituality, quietly watching the people below. Chapter 474. Inside the Ghost King's sect cave, it was a mess. The earthquake this time was much stronger than before, and that strange, mysterious power seemed to be even more terrifying. More than 10 of the Ghost King's sect disciples went berserk at the same time. Although in the end these crazy disciples were still killed one by the sober ones, but the casualties were also more than 10. More importantly, these people who had died, no matter if they had gone mad or died in battle, were all their companions. Many of them had even been fighting together or chatting with each other a moment ago. But in the next moment, they had already become mortal enemies. This was a cruel and horrifying matter, especially to the Ghost King's sect disciples who had finally gotten 10 days of peace. The madness and fear that descended again, and this time it was 10 times more than before, had already made everyone's nerves stretch to the extreme. Not long after the violent earthquake, finally someone who wanted to escape appeared. There were not many who escaped, only one, and it was also not an important person, just an ordinary Ghost King sect disciple, had been in Ghost King sect for less than 3 years. And Ghost King sect was a branch of the evil sect. Right now, they even considered themselves as the leader of the holy sect. The evil sect's various kinds of cruel punishments. How would it be lacking? This disciple who escaped was very quickly caught and severely punished, but that shadow that shrouded everyone's hearts and the suffocating atmosphere could not be removed. Not knowing when it started, everyone was silent. The huge Ghost King sect was in a dead silence. Those who could not speak would not speak. The road was clear under the suffocating silence. What exactly was surging? Under such circumstances, the leader of the Ghost King sect, the Ghost King of the first branch, still remained silent. After shocking everyone by executing the fleeing disciples of the Ghost King sect, he was still as mysterious and reclusive as before. No one knew what this once great and bold overlord was thinking. Was he also affected by the terrifying power and went crazy, or was he plotting something else in his heart? Anyway, nobody knew, but Ghostly could clearly feel this strange atmosphere. In fact, as long as one was slightly clear-headed and rational, they could clearly see the abnormality in the chaos in Ghost King's sect. Just that, Ghostly had no intention to do anything about this situation. To him, Bai Yao came first. And right now, the most important thing seemed to be that mysterious power that repeatedly appeared when he was saving Bai Yao. Before he returned this time, he had never felt such a mysterious power in majestic Fox Mountain, so evil and terrible, completely not like the power of the human world. Just that he secretly searched the Ghost King sect caves up and down, other than the cracks and cracked ground everywhere. He did not find anything. Now, there was only one place that he had not searched, the Ghost King's residence. However, before Ghostly could think of a way to search for the Ghost King's residence, someone came looking for him. Because the earthquake that day was violent to the extent that many of the rocks above the passageways fell down. These days, other than the few times Ghostly went out to search, he usually stayed in the cold stone room. Even if he went out, he would try his best to rush back. He was not afraid of anything, but he was afraid of another violent earthquake like this. If he was not by Bai Yao's side, the rocks fell and hurt Bai Yao, then it would really be an irreparable hatred. Right now, the Ghost King's sect cave was obviously not a safe place. Ghostly thought of these dangers the day after the earthquake, spoke to Ghost King on this point toward his daughter. Ghost King naturally did not dare to be careless. Just that in the rush, he was unable to find a suitable place to settle Bai Yao down. Not to mention, Bai Yao's body had been in deep sleep for 10 years. Right now, she could not easily leave the cold stone platform. And to move out of the Ghost King's sect cave, he still had to find a dry and cold place. That would require time. Helplessly, although Ghostly was anxious, but he could only bear with it. Ghost King sent more men to find a suitable place. Ghostly guarded beside Bai Yao day and night. The cold stone room was, after all, different from the other places. These few days, the cracks around the walls had been repaired in the shortest time possible. Even the stone door at the entrance, a new huge rock was brought from somewhere and installed. Other than the repair marks were still clear, at least on the outside. The cold stone room was not as terrible as the other places outside. Ghostly leaned against the cold stone platform, sat on the ground, his eyes wandering, drifting around this cold stone chamber. Xiao Hui crouched beside him, looked rather well-behaved. In its hands were a few wild fruits that came from nowhere, minding its own business and munching on them. Usually, Ghostly would not bring Xiao Hui to the cold stone room, but the situation was special. He had to stay by Bai Yao's side all day and could not return to his own residence. Other than that, Ghostly was also suspicious of that mysterious force deep in majestic Fox Mountain. Therefore, he did not wish to let Xiao Hui roam around alone. Might as well bring along with him. The white cold air floated up from the stone platform behind him. Floated in the air like a thin mist. Ghostly quietly watched the hazy cold white smoke, his eyes gradually blurred. At this moment, the stone door of the icy cold stone room suddenly made a low sound, and then slowly opened. Because it was a newly changed stone door, the sound still sounded shaky. Behind the door, a black figure quietly walked in. It was Mr. Ghost. Ghostly glanced at him, did not speak. The stone door behind Mr. Ghost again slowly closed, isolating this stone room from the outside world. Mr. Ghost slowly walked forward, did not immediately speak to Ghostly. Instead looked at Bai Yao, stared for a while, then slowly said, "Miss Bai Yao has become like this. Unknowingly, it has already been 10 years. Ghostly's face abruptly tightened. A sharp glint shot out from his eyes at Mr. Ghost. Under the black veil, Mr. Ghost's expression was unknown, but looking at his movements, he did not seem to feel anything. Slowly, Ghostly's eyes slowly retracted, shifted to Bai Yao. Looking at her tranquil face with a faint smile, Ghostly suddenly felt a sourness in his heart. A trace of sadness flashed past his face. Mr. Ghost saw Ghostly's expression. A strange glint flashed in his eyes, paused for a moment, and then turned to look at Ghostly, said, "Do you want to save Miss Bai Yao?" Ghostly looked up at Mr. Ghost, but did not show much agitation on his face, indifferently said, "If you have something to say, then say it." Mr. Ghost did not seem to mind Ghostly's indifferent attitude, said, "That day when I used the astrolabe that you brought back, although there was an anomaly, the scene was chaotic, but after thinking about it carefully, it is not that there is no hope to save Miss Bai Yao." Ghostly's countenance then changed, flipped over, and stood up. Xiao Hui saw its master's movements, flicked its tail, jumped twice, climbed up to Ghostly's shoulder, and then took a bite of the wild fruit in its hand, looked at Mr. Ghost. Under the 5 eyes of Ghostly, Xiao Hui, 1 human and 1 monkey. Mr. Ghost paused for a moment, then continued, "According to what I see, this astrolabe treasure is an ancient divine object that has been passed down for a long time, but has never appeared before. It is no small matter." Ghostly was surprised, said, "Ancient divine object?" Mr. Ghost nodded his head, said, "According to ancient legend, the ancient deities had passed down several treasures. All of them had inconceivable divine powers, not what humans can control and understand, and this astrolabe treasure should be one of them." He paused, glanced at Ghostly. Ghostly was frowning slightly, but was concentrating on listening. The black veil on Mr. Ghost's face moved slightly, said, "According to legend, this astrolabe treasure is mysterious and unfathomable, containing the truths of heaven and earth, containing endless mysteries, able to sever yin and yang, stabilize the soul, peep into the sky. The ancients even said that it can even reach creation, reverse karma and fate. It is really an inconceivable divine weapon." Ghostly's thoughts turned rapidly. That day in Tianyin Temple, Puhong, the 2 masters also roughly said, although there were some differences, but clearly this jade astrolabe was not an ordinary object. Could it be that Mr. Ghost really had the ability to save Bai Yao? With that thought, Ghostly's body also trembled slightly, stepped forward and said, "Mr. Please save her." Mr. Ghost flashed slightly, avoided Ghostly's salute, indifferently said, "Miss Bai Yao is Ghost King Sect Head's beloved daughter. Old Man has received Sect Head's great kindness. If it is possible to save her, naturally, I will not refuse." But he wanted to speak, but stopped. Ghostly was anxious, said, "Mr. Please speak." Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, said, "I have said it just now. This treasure is an ancient divine weapon, unfathomable. The various powers within, I have only heard of it. Just that I have been immersed in yin-yang ghost way all my life. I am confident in this soul way, not inferior to anyone in the world. Therefore, as long as the astrolabe treasure really has this ability, I will definitely be able to comprehend it, and from there save Bayou, Mississippi. After Ghostly heard it, this was supposed to be great news, but his reaction was strange. There was no ecstasy. His eyes moved away from Mr. Ghost, turned and looked at the stone platform. After a moment, he slowly turned back, his expression indifferent, his eyes indistinctly, had an unexplainable mockery and vigilance. Faintly said, "Then Mister's meaning is—" Mr. Ghost pondered for a moment, said, "I need time to comprehend the mystery of this astrolabe, if you trust me, and for the sake of saving Miss Bayou, please lend me the astrolabe temporarily to study. Once I comprehend the mystery, I will definitely rush over to save Miss Bayou." The corners of Ghost Lee's mouth moved slightly, slowly revealing a trace of a cold smile. His gaze also became somewhat cold. He slowly said, "Then what if I don't trust you?" Mr. Ghost was stunned, for a moment seemed to be stifled, did not know what to say. Ghostly coldly said, "That day outside Ching Yun Hill, Tong Tian Peak Founder's Ancestral Hall. That old man was clearly an old friend of yours. You also killed him without even blinking. Between you and me, we have fought several times, whether we have the intention to kill or not. Both of us are very clear in our hearts. As what you said, this astrolabe is really that mystical. Firstly, it concerns the important matter of saving Bayou. Secondly, this magical weapon is not my own. How can I hand it over to you so easily?" Mr. Ghost sneered, said, "So it seems like Bayou Miss in your heart is not that important? There's hope to save her, but you would rather give it up?" Ghostly coldly snorted, said, "Asking me to hand over the magical weapon to you. That is impossible." Mr. Ghost spread his hands, said, "Oh, then there is no other way." Ghostly was silent for a moment, suddenly said, "I have an idea. It is for you." He glanced at Mr. Ghost, frowned, hesitated for a moment, finally softened his voice, changed his words. "It is for Mr. You to tire yourself for a while. Not only can you comprehend the magical weapon, it can also resolve my worries. Not sure if Mr. is willing to listen." Chapter 475. Mr. Ghost, said, "There is still such a way. Please speak." Ghostly said, "Sorry to trouble, mister. Just study this astrolabe in this cold stone room." Mr. Ghost was surprised, said, "What?" Ghostly indifferently said, "Of course I will accompany Mister. Or if Mister thinks that this place is not suitable to study, I am also willing to let Mister choose any place, but I will definitely follow beside." Mr. Ghost looked at Ghostly. A strange glint flashed in his eyes. Ghostly's face was as usual, but his gaze was determined, clearly unwilling to give in. Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, slowly said, "Let me consider this matter. We will talk about it later." Speaking, he turned back and glanced at Bayou lying on the stone platform, suddenly said, "But Miss Bayou's suffering these 10 years is really not small. You have to think carefully." Ghostly coldly snorted. A trace of pain flashed past his eyes, but his gaze was still sharp and sober, said, "No need for you to say more. I know better than you 100 times." Mr. Ghost nodded, turned and walked to open the stone door, left the stone room, watched that black figure disappear. The stone door closed with a rumble. Ghostly quietly turned and sat down beside the stone platform, stared at Bayou's face. After a long time, he quietly said, "Bayou, don't blame me. I really have no choice but to do this." After Mr. Ghost left the chamber, he stood outside the chamber for a moment. The tunnel outside was as usual empty, but for some reason, a strange atmosphere seemed to pervade the air. Mr. Ghost looked at the empty tunnel for a long while, turned and walked towards the other side. His footsteps were silent. In this strange silence, not a single sound was heard, just like a spirit. The deeper he walked, the darker the tunnel became. Just that Mr. Ghost, dressed in black, seemed to be more suitable for this atmosphere. Looking from afar, he seemed to be slowly blending into that darkness. Just that he walked and walked, suddenly stopped, looked ahead. In front of him, there was a turn that led to another direction. There was no light at the corner. It seemed the darkest, and in that indistinct place, there seemed to be a figure quietly standing there. Mr. Ghost looked deeply at that black figure, slowly walked over. In the darkness, the figure moved and said in a low voice, "How is it?" Mr. Ghost silently shook his head, said, "He is not willing to give me that treasure." The shadow stiffened, and it seemed to be slightly unexpected. After that, for some reason, it actually became slightly angry. It suddenly took a step forward and said in a low voice, "Could it be that he doesn't care about Yao Er's life?" Mr. Ghost shook his head again, said, "It's not like you don't know his character. Miss Bai Yao is the most important person in his heart, just that I think he does not trust me, so he is not willing to let me study the astrolabe." The shadow snorted and slowly walked out from the darkness. It was Ghost King. His face was cold and stern. He said, "Since he refused to hand over the treasure and our blood formation is not completed, it is not good to fall out with him in such a short time. What should we do?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "Ghostly still cares a lot about Miss Bai Yao, so he raised a condition to me." Ghost King was surprised, said, "What condition?" Mr. Ghost sighed softly and said, "He can lend me the astrolabe treasure to study, but I have to be under his eyes at all times, watched by him." Ghost King immediately frowned, hesitated for a moment, and said, "We are taking that treasure to remove the Qian Kuan lock that is binding the hidden dragon cauldron and the four divinities' blood formation. If he is not even a step away, how can we cast the spell?" Mr. Ghost bitterly laughed and said, "Then it is difficult here." Ghost King was silent, did not speak. Mr. Ghost thought for a while, said, "In my opinion, it is better to first retrieve the treasure and carefully study it. The ancient celestial weapon is full of wonders. Perhaps we can really find a way to remove the Qian Kuan lock. You must know that the astrolabe and the Qian Kuan lock and the hidden dragon cauldron resonated, but were separated by a great distance." Ghost King silently nodded, slowly said, "Right now, this is the only way." Mr. Ghost turned and walked away. He indifferently said, "Then I will go and prepare first." "Wait!" Ghost King's voice suddenly sounded behind him. Mr. Ghost paused for a moment, turned and looked at Ghost King, said, "Sect Head, is there anything else?" Ghost King's eyes suddenly turned sharp, stared at Mr. Ghost for a long while, and then slowly said, "There is one more thing I want to ask you." Mr. Ghost said, "Sect Head, please speak." Ghost King's face was indifferent, but after the sharpness in his eyes, he seemed to be at a loss, said, "I ask you, that astrolabe ancient divine weapon, other than being able to remove the Qian Kuan lock, is it really possible to save Bai Yao?" Mr. Ghost was silent. After a long while slowly said, "I don't know. Everything will only be clear after I carefully study that weapon." Ghost King's lips moved and then gently waved his hand, quietly said, "I understand, you can go." Mr. Ghost cupped his hands to Ghost King, turned and left. Ghost King stood alone in the passageway, did not move for a long time. The darkness in the passageway slowly spread out, gently merging Ghost King's lonely figure into the shadows. Not long after, other than a patch of darkness, his figure could no longer be seen. Ghostly quietly sat in the cold stone chamber, his back leaning against the stone platform where Bai Yao was lying. Xiao Hui was lying beside his legs, its head leaning on his thigh, snoring loudly. The stone chamber was quiet, so quiet that one could almost hear his own heartbeat. Ghost Lee's face was indifferent, but a strange glint flashed in his eyes. Indistinctly, there was a burning feeling. Right now, it had already been a day and night since Mr. Ghost mentioned to study the astrolabe, but that black figure had not appeared again. Ghost Lee's heart gradually felt uneasy, especially every time he saw Bai Yao's figure lying on the stone platform. The pain in his heart would become more and more intense. He even had the thought of risking everything for Bai Yao. But it was also at this moment, as if it was a reward for his sleepless nights, the stone door emitted a deep rumbling sound, slowly opened. Mr. Ghost's black figure appeared at the door, slowly walked in. The rumbling sound of the door opening was heard, deep and powerful, startled Xiao Hui, who was still sleeping. The monkey flipped over, crawled up from the ground, scratched its head. Its 3 eyes still looked drowsy. After a long while it recovered, bared its teeth at Mr. Ghost, and made a ferocious face. Then climbed up Ghost Lee's shoulder, seemed to be very dissatisfied with Mr. Ghost, who disturbed its sleep. But the monkey's dissatisfaction, Ghostly clearly did not show the same expression. Even secretly heaved a sigh of relief, faintly smiled. He looked at Mr. Ghost, simply said, "How is it?" Mr. Ghost was naturally not someone who liked to nag. Directly and clearly replied, "Just do as you said before." Ghostly nodded. Mr. Ghost was heard looking around, suddenly said, "But..." Ghostly was surprised, said, "But what?" Mr. Ghost said, "But I'm afraid we have to change to another place." Ghostly frowned, said, "Why is that?" Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "This ice stone room is after all Miss Bai Yao's resting place. That astrolabe treasure had changed a few times it was activated. If we continue to meditate here, wouldn't it be detrimental to Miss Bai Yao?" Ghostly pondered for a moment, slowly nodded, said, "That's right. If that's the case, we really should change to another place." He glanced at Mr. Ghost, said, "Could it be that Mr. Ghost already knows where the suitable place is?" Mr. Ghost smiled, said, "Since I've already made up my mind before coming here, naturally I've thought of everything. Come with me." Speaking, he turned and walked out of the stone room. Ghostly looked back at Bai Yao, who was lying on the stone platform, softly said, "Bai Yao, rest well. I will definitely think of a way to save you." Bai Yao quietly laid there, an indistinct smile in her tranquility. Ghostly quietly watched her for a long while, then turned, took a deep breath, and strode out. The stone door slowly closed behind him. Ghostly looked at that black figure, said, "Will Mr. Please lead the way?" Mr. Ghost quietly laughed. That voice was eerie. Ghostly heard it and couldn't help but frown. But usually when he heard Mr. Ghost talking, it seemed to be the same tone, just that for some reason, today, it sounded exceptionally piercing to the ear. Mr. Ghost gently gestured to Ghostly, turned, and walked deeper in the mountain. Ghostly followed behind him. Xiaohui crouched on Ghostly's shoulder, seemed to have completely lost its sleepiness, looking around, especially at the increasingly thick and deep cracks on both sides of the tunnel. Both of them slowly walked forward in the dark tunnel. There was not a single figure nearby. Only footsteps reverberated in the illusory space. After walking for a while, Ghostly suddenly spoke, "Mister, have you seen the cracks around here?" Mr. Ghost's black figure suddenly paused, but he did not stop and did not turn to look. He maintained his unhurried pace, at the same time quietly said, "These things are so obvious, of course I have seen them. I wonder why Vice Sect Head suddenly asked about this." Ghostly's footsteps did not change. If he could follow Mr. Ghost slowly forward. Just as he looked at the cracks on the walls, a strange glint flashed in his eyes, and then slowly returned to Mr. Ghost's back, faintly said, "I've been in Ghost King's sect for 10 years. Never have such strange things happened. Mister's time in Ghost King's sect is much longer than mine. Your knowledge is profound. Maybe you can answer my doubts?" Mr. Ghost suddenly stopped. His black figure seemed to freeze. Ghostly also stopped at the same time, quietly watched him. The dark tunnel was empty, as if freedom of darkness was quietly spreading out, slowly gathered beside Mr. Ghost. Mr. Ghost was silent for a long time, then slowly turned around, looked at Ghostly. Ghostly stood behind him, without the slightest intention of avoiding him, looked straight into his eyes. Mr. Ghost's face was veiled, his expression could not be seen, but his eyes were extremely bright, incongruous with the indistinctly gathered darkness. His deep voice, calm tone, quietly said, "May I ask Vice Sect Head, why did you not ask the countless people in Ghost King's sect, and instead asked me?" Chapter 476. Ghostly stared at his eyes, indifferently said, "Naturally, it is because I know Mister is the #1 in Ghost King's sect in terms of knowledge and experience, so I sincerely seek your advice." Mr. Ghost was silent for a moment, looked at Ghostly, but saw his indifferent face. Without any expression, could not tell what exactly he was thinking. After a long time, unhurriedly said, "These cracks are because of several earthquakes within 100 miles radius of Majestic Fox Mountain, causing the mountain to shake, the rock walls to crack." Ghostly looked deeply at Mr. Ghost. An indistinct glint in his eyes said, "So it is because of this?" Mr. Ghost suddenly asked, "If not, what does Vice Sect Head Sir think it is?" Ghostly did not speak. The tunnel where they were still conversing suddenly quietened down, carrying a trace of cold air. Mr. Ghost suddenly had that illusion. Around Ghostly, unknowingly, some darkness quietly gathered, surrounding that young man. After a moment, Ghostly indifferently said, "I am only sincerely seeking advice. No other intentions. Mister said this is the reason. Naturally it is." Mr. Ghost looked deeply at Ghostly, slowly turned, and continued to walk forward. Ghostly's footsteps were heard again behind him. On the stone walls of the passageway beside the two of them, the crisscrossing, ferocious, and abrupt cracks seemed to be looking at the two of them with a sinister smile, roaring silently. Both of them slowly walked deeper into the tunnel, the darkness behind them, quietly encircled, swallowing the last trace of light. Not knowing how long they had walked in the tunnel, Ghostly, who was behind Mr. Ghost, observed the surroundings, slowly frowned. Finally, when Mr. Ghost stopped, stood an extremely secluded stone room entrance. Clearly he had chosen this place, but Ghostly's brows locked even tighter. "Wait!" Just when Mr. Ghost stretched out his hand to open the door, Ghostly suddenly spoke. "Isn't this Ghost King Sect Head's stone room?" Mr. Ghost slowly turned around, quietly said, "That's right, this is the place." Ghostly frowned, said, "You want to comprehend the astrolabe here?" Mr. Ghost nodded, said, "That's right." Ghostly coldly glanced at him, said, "There are thousands of stone chambers in the Ghost King's Sect caves. Why did you choose this one?" Mr. Ghost glanced at Ghostly. A glint flashed past his eyes, said, "Why, do you feel it is inappropriate to choose Ghost King's Sect Head's residence?" Ghostly was silent. If he really had to say what was wrong with Ghost King's stone chamber, he really could not tell. But these few days, in order to pursue that mysterious force, he had already secretly searched every corner of Ghost King's Sect caves. Only the place where Ghost King resided, he still had some scruples and did not search carefully. Staring at that stone door, after a moment of silence, Ghostly quietly said, "I don't have anything, but this place is after all Sect Head's residence. Is it better to inform him?" Mr. Ghost laughed quietly, said, "Don't worry, I've already told Sect Head." After knowing it is to save Miss Biao, Sect Head naturally agreed immediately. As for why I chose this place, a strange light flashed in his eyes as he quietly said, "It's just because this place is quiet." Ghostly glanced at Mr. Ghost, suddenly sneered and said, "Quiet only." Mr. Ghost seemed to not understand the other meaning in Ghostly's words, indifferently said, "That's all." Ghostly shut his mouth and did not speak anymore. Mr. Ghost nodded, stretched his hand to open the stone door. In a deep and familiar rumble, the stone door slowly moved to the side, revealing the simple furnished room inside. Ghostly followed Mr. Ghost in and then glanced around. The surrounding furnishings were the picture albums hanging on the walls, all the same as what he had seen before. But Ghostly frowned, discovered that even he could not recall when was the last time he came to Ghost King's residence to visit him. Ghost King was not in the house. Mr. Ghost turned around, faced Ghostly's questioning gaze, faintly said, "Ghost King's Sect Head had instructed beforehand, ordered us to stay here and comprehend. He is busy with important matters and will not disturb us these few days." Ghostly silently nodded, suddenly thought of something, said, "Oh, right, Bayao." Mr. Ghost waved his hand, signaled Ghostly to be at ease, said, "Don't worry. Sect Head has already said that during this period of our study, he will take care of Bai Yao Miss. You don't believe others, but you won't even believe Bai Yao Miss father, right?" Ghostly was silent for a moment, nodded and said, "Then I am also at ease. Mr. Ghost, if there is nothing else, shall we start now?" Mr. Ghost took 2 praying mats from the side, threw one to Ghostly, himself sat on the other, said, "All right." Ghostly sat on the other praying mat, took out the astrolabe magical weapon from his bosom, untied the black cloth, stared at the astrolabe for a moment, and then slowly passed it to Mr. Ghost. Xiao Hui, who was crouching on Ghostly's shoulder, its eyes followed the astrolabe. Its expression suddenly turned strange. Mr. Ghost took the astrolabe. It was warm to the touch. Faint white, gentle light emitted from the astrolabe, gently flowing in front of him, reflected in his eyes. Mr. Ghost quietly watched the astrolabe. His eyes looked at it inch by inch, as if to see through this treasure. The stone chamber fell into silence. It was as if even the sound of breathing had disappeared. On the other side of the majestic Fox Mountain Ghost King's Sect cave, after Ghostly left with Mr. Ghost, it sank into the usual quiet, cold stone chamber. The white, cold air carrying some loneliness quietly drifted in the stone chamber. In the empty stone room, the green figure was still lying there quietly, motionless. There was a peaceful expression on her face, and a faint smile hung on the corner of her mouth. It was as if everything was the same as it was 10 years ago, and time had not left the slightest trace on her face. She was still so beautiful, but in her heart, had there ever been a faint sorrow or a faint sense of regret? The white cold air like smoke drifted, looked gradually hazy, like a shadow that had been in a dream for too long, appearing and disappearing in the dream. Ding! Suddenly, an extremely clear sound, thin but clear, rang out in the cold stone chamber. Invisible sound waves swept past, like a breeze, the faint mist like cold mist drifting in the stone chamber, suddenly trembled slightly. Ding! Another light sound. This time it was even clearer. That sound came from Bai Yao's white hands, the small Hehuan bell. In the stone room, the light smoke that was originally drifting seemed to have started to drift a little faster, and the melodious echoes of the bells bounced off the stone walls, one after the other, actually unending, interweaving into a faint reverberating music, a bit of joy, a bit of sorrow, a bit of passion, and a bit of sigh. Ding! That third bell sound suddenly rose. Instantly the white smoke in the stone chamber flowed backward, like the waves in the sea of clouds rolling up and down. A clear whistle split the stone, pierced the clouds, straight up, faint golden light, faintly shone out from Bai Yao's hands. In the stone chamber, there was a faint sound of wind and thunder, but after a moment, it seemed to be weak, unable to continue. This clear, sharp sound slowly subsided, and the faint golden light between Bai Yao's fingers also gradually dimmed down. The ringing of the bell slowly disappeared in the cold stone room. The white smoke returned to normal, gently drifting as if nothing had happened, not leaving any trace. Silence returned to the stone chamber. After a long time, the stone door of the cold stone chamber suddenly emitted a deep roar, slowly opened. Ghost King's figure appeared at the door, slowly walked in. He slowly walked to the side of the cold stone platform, looked at his daughter, after a while quietly said, "Yaoer, it is father who is here to see you." Bai Yao's expression did not have the slightest change, like every moment in these 10 years. Ghost King was clearly used to such an outcome. His gaze towards his daughter was full of love. There was no longer any fierceness. He gently sat down at the side of the stone platform, raised his head, looked at the white smoke floating in the air in the stone chamber. "Yaoer, 10 years, unknowingly, you have already slept like this for 10 years. He suddenly laughed, with some bitterness at the corner of his mouth, quietly said, "If you wake up now, will you not recognize father?" He paused for a moment, then gently shook his head and laughed bitterly, as if he was laughing at himself. He said to himself, "How could that be? Naturally, you would recognize me, but I'm sure you would say, 'Father, why do you have so many white hairs?'" Ghost King's hand gently stroked his smooth hair, and his expression also seemed to be at a loss. Between his fingers, the white hairs were all over. He sank into silence, as if recalling something, not knowing if he was lamenting his growing old or recalling the past of father and daughter. After a long time, his voice was heard softly saying, "Yaoer, don't worry, as long as father is alive, I will definitely save you." Ghostly and Mr. Ghost have already gone to study that magical weapon. Hopefully heaven will open its eyes and be able to comprehend a way to save you. Speaking till here, Ghost King stopped. His expression gradually turned cold. After a moment, he quietly continued, "But if heaven really does not open its eyes, you also don't have to be afraid. As long as that astrolabe can unlock the Qiankun lock, the 4 divinities' blood formation will be perfect. Then Father will be omnipotent. Dominating the world will not be a problem. Coming back to save you will definitely be as easy as turning one's palm." The white smoke suddenly abruptly retreated 1 chi. In that instant, Ghost King seemed to be agitated. A formless energy suddenly burst out from his body, shot out. After a long while, the white smoke slowly floated back, gathered in the middle of the stone chamber. "Don't be afraid. Don't worry." Ghost King's eyes were still staring at the white smoke in the air, but his words were still so gentle. "Father will definitely save you. Father's stone chamber is the closest place to the 4 divinities' blood formation in the entire majestic Fox Mountain Cave. Now, what we have to do is to slowly wait that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.